Lin Bay's vision suddenly exploded. A horrifying scene burst into sight. The sky split open, revealing a blood-red abyss. Countless streaks of light plummeted through the rift, and cities burned. Humanoid monsters roamed every street. Screams and the sickening tear of flesh and bone swarmed his ears from all directions. One voice cut through the rest, crystal clear. A woman shrieked, her pitch so shrill it felt like it would pierce his eardrums. Lin Bay tried to turn his head, yet his neck refused to obey. Then a massive claw surged into view, blotting out everything he could see. Lin Bay. The vision shattered. Fat Manager Wang's bloated face loomed over him, eyes blazing with fury. Lin Bay. We're in a meeting. What are you daydreaming about? Everyone's waiting for your report. And why the hell are you rolling your eyes? Lin Bay slowly lowered his head, his hands trembling. Sorry, I don't feel well. His voice came out rougher than usual. Old Wang, a colleague sitting beside him, pushed up his glasses and lowered his voice. Dude, you really rolled your eyes just now. Scared the hell out of me. Could it be epilepsy? Lin Bay ignored him. A warm sensation spread from beneath his collar, pressed tight against his chest. It grew hotter by the second. He pushed back his chair and stood. Manager Wang, may I take a break? I need to use the restroom. Manager Wang was about to erupt, but met Lin Bay's gaze and froze. He could not name what lay in those eyes. There was no malice, yet it choked every harsh word back down his throat. Go on, hurry up. By the time Lin Bay stepped out of the conference room, his hands had stopped shaking, but his heart hammered wildly. Harsh pale fluorescent lights filled the restroom, and the exhaust fan droned monotonously. Lin Bay stood before the mirror, twisted on the tap, and splashed frigid cold water over his face. Only then did his rigid expression soften a little. He tugged open his collar. Hanging around his neck was an ancestral jade pendant passed down from his great-grandfather. No one knew what material it was carved from, and it held no monetary value. Lin Bay had worn it for 26 years. The jade glowed faintly. He reached out to touch it. Instead of its usual icy, hard surface, it felt warm, faintly yielding, like touching something living. Shit. Lin Bay jolted back in shock. He fumbled out his phone, opened the browser, and typed into the search bar, "What illness causes sudden hallucinations?" Before the results could load, a news notification popped up. Headline: Strange school of fish appears at local port, 3 times normal size, lined with teeth. Curious, Lin Bay tapped it open. The video lasted only 15 seconds, shot from a dock with wildly shaking footage. The sea was thick with fish, dim lighting masking fine details yet revealing their grotesque silhouettes. They were far larger than ordinary fish, some nearly the height of an adult human. As the camera zoomed in, rows upon rows of razor-sharp teeth filled their mouths, stretching deep down their throats. The comment section had been locked. The post had gone live 10 minutes prior. Lin Bay flipped his phone face down onto the sink counter. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. His face was ashen, but his eyes remained lucid. 26 years old, a corporate wage slave, plain-looking, unremarkable enough to vanish in any crowd. He had always been a staunch materialist. But the visions he'd seen were far too vivid to dismiss. Even if they were hallucinations, how to explain the jade's strange reaction? It glowed, for the first time in 26 years. Footsteps echoed outside the restroom. Lin Bay hastily tucked the pendant back under his shirt and turned off the tap. When he returned to the meeting room, Manager Wang was still rambling about KPIs. Lin Bay sat down, and Old Wang leaned over. You all right? You look terrible. I'm fine. Old Wang dropped the subject. Lin Bay did not absorb a single word of the rest of the meeting. The meeting wrapped up at 10 p.m. Lin Bay gathered his things and left. Old Wang called after him. Hey, team building tomorrow. Be there at 9 sharp, don't be late. MHM. Lin Bay did not look back. He rode a shared bicycle home. The city stretched out unchanged along the road, neon signs flickering, crowds streaming to and fro. Everything appeared utterly ordinary. As he passed an alley, he spotted 3 stray cats crumpled beside a trash bin at the entrance. Their limbs stiffened, dark crimson fluid oozing from their jaws. Lin Bay halted, about to step closer for a better look, when a tight, icy twinge shot up the nape of his neck. A cold dread washed over him. Overcome with fear, he spared the cats not another glance and pedaled frantically home. Once inside his apartment, Lin Bay double-locked the door and drew every curtain shut. He pulled the jade pendant over his head and set it on the coffee table. The glow faded. It lay silent and inert. Lin Bay stared unblinkingly at it, desperate to discern its secret. After a long pause, a faint crack sounded from the jade. A hairline fracture split its surface. A wisp of pale golden smoke drifted out from the crack. The smoke did not disperse. It coiled like a thin thread, rose slowly, hung suspended in the air for a heartbeat, then burrowed straight into the center of his forehead. Something deep within Lin Bay's mind exploded. Torrents of information crashed over him like a broken dam, far too vast to process. Yet one truth burned clearer than any memory, etched deeper into him than his own name. The Sky Rift arrives in 15 days. Another vision unfolded, 100 times sharper than the one in the meeting room. The sky tearing apart, bloody light raining down, the earth trembling. Countless lives stripped of their humanity in an instant. At the very end of the vision, only one number lingered. 5:12 a.m., May 12, 2036. 15 days. Lin Bay jolted awake. He had collapsed onto the sofa at some point, soaked in cold sweat, his shirt pasted to his chest. He could feel the jade pendant merging into his body. Lifting his right wrist, he spotted a faint golden mark etched into the inner skin. A tattoo shaped exactly like the pendant. He sat up slowly and reached for the water glass on the coffee table. A sudden thought crossed his mind. He wanted to store the cup away. The glass vanished in an instant. Lin Bay froze, and the cup reappeared in his grasp a split second later. He stared at the glass in his left hand, then at his empty right palm. Holy shit. At 4:03 a.m., he dialed Zhao Zilong's number. The line rang 12 times before the call was picked up. Zhao Zilong's voice crackled with groggy irritation. This better be a kidnapping emergency, or I'll beat you senseless tomorrow. Come to my place. 3 seconds of silence. Now, what's going on? The sharp edge left his tone. Lin Bay glanced at the half-full glass that had vanished and reappeared in his hand. I need to tell you the world ends in 15 days. Do you believe me? No reply came from the other end of the line. Lin Bay lit a cigarette. Then Zhao Zilong spoke. Give me 20 minutes. Before hanging up, he added a warning. You'd better not be dead drunk. If you are, you're getting a beating you won't forget. Lin Bay said nothing. He gazed out the window at the glowing neon skyline. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Yet in 15 days, all of it might cease to exist. Lin Bay recognized the rumble of Zhao Zilong's beat-up Jetta outside the door. After his military discharge, Zhao Zilong had driven construction vehicles for 2 years, hitting the gas harder than he ever had behind an armored troop carrier in service. The door was unlocked. Zhao Zilong pushed inside wearing only slippers, his hair matted like a bird's nest, yet his eyes wide awake and sharp. He scanned Lin Bay from the entryway, dropped onto the sofa, and drained the half-glass of cold water on the coffee table in one gulp. Speak. Lin Bay sat across from him. The Sky Rift, the apocalypse, spatial superpowers, the Jade Pendant. He had rehashed every detail 100 times in his head, yet voicing them aloud made him sound like a lunatic. He decided to skip words entirely. Don't say a word yet. Zhao Zilong frowned. Lin Bay held out his right palm, focusing his will. The TV remote on the coffee table vanished. A heartbeat later, it materialized back in his open hand. Zhao Zilong fixed his gaze rigidly on Lin Bay's hand. Magic trick prop, he said flatly. Old Lin, did you fall for some online scam and learn close-up magic, dragging me out of bed in the middle of the night to be your audience? Lin Bay did not argue. He channeled his power a second time. This time, instead of shifting its position, he sent the remote fully away, storing it on the first floor of the small pagoda. Zhao Zilong watched the remote evaporate from Lin Bay's grasp without a trace. He swept every surface of the coffee table, then bent to check beneath the sofa. Nothing. Where'd you hide it? Lin Bay stood and stepped before him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Before Zhao Zilong could react, his vision blurred, and he found himself standing dead center on the balcony. Fuck. Zhao Zilong spun around, staring at Lin Bay then down at his own feet. He had been beside the living room sofa a moment ago, now 7 meters away on the balcony. No movement, no transition, instantaneous teleportation. He slowly raised his right hand and pinched the webbing of his left palm hard. Does it hurt? Lin Bay asked. Like hell it does. Then you believe me? Zhao Zilong did not answer immediately. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the iron balcony railing, falling silent for a long stretch. I heard rumors back in the military, he said quietly. Last year, freak fish monsters surfaced off the East China Sea. Not the red tide the news covered, actual fish, bigger than grown men. The Coast Guard mobilized, then higher-ups suppressed all reports. He turned to face Lin Bay. Is this connected to what you're talking about? Lin Bay nodded. That was only the start. In 15 days, the whole world will turn into that nightmare. He recounted every scrap of information the Jade had imparted. The Sky Rift, strange cosmic matter, mutated beasts, the awakening of superpowers, and that date, 5:12 a.m., May 12, 2036. Zhao Zilong did not press for proof of the timeline's accuracy. Years of military service had taught him that when officials could not explain an incident, catastrophe loomed close. Can I go inside that space of yours? Lin Bay blinked. Inside what? The pocket dimension you control. Lin Bay hesitated for a split second, and in the next heartbeat, both men stood in the middle of a vast expanse of barren black soil. A 9-story stone pagoda rose before them. Zhao Zilong stared at the black earth beneath his feet, then up at the pagoda, then back at Lin Bay. What is this place? It's inside my jade pendant. Lin Bay guessed at the ground beneath them. This spirit field can grow crops. Ordinary seeds planted here turn into spirit plants. Eating them can completely remake a person's physique. Remake your physique? I don't know all the specifics, Lin Bay replied. But the Jade's information states as much. Regular people who eat these plants long-term will drastically improve their physical constitution. Zhao Zilong asked no further questions. Lin Bei walked toward the pagoda, with Zhao Zilong trailing behind. The massive wooden gate to the first floor stood wide open. This floor is storage space, Lin Bei explained. Time stands still here, and it's infinitely vast. Zhao Zilong froze, stunned speechless. After a long moment, he spoke. If the apocalypse is real, this place will be our lifeline. His gaze drifted to the staircase leading upward to the second floor, blocked by a pale golden light curtain etched with slowly swirling runes. Lin Bei saw it too. The runes flickered, and a line of text materialized unbidden in his mind. Cultivation level insufficient. Access denied. Floors 2 and above are for cultivation, he said. I can't open them yet. The Jade says my cultivation base is too weak. But this storage floor is fully functional. I can absorb any unclaimed, non-sentient object into storage with a single thought. Zhao Zilong pondered this. What's the maximum distance? I haven't tested it yet. When they stepped back out of the pocket dimension, only 1 minute had ticked by on the living room wall clock. Zhao Zilong sank onto the sofa and remained silent for 3 full minutes before speaking. The bandage principle. The what? My dad was a combat medic. He taught me this. When dealing with massive traumatic wounds, you don't try to fix everything at once. Locate the bleeding points first, stop the hemorrhage, disinfect, then suture and bandage. You only have 15 days. You can't save everyone in that window. Prioritize the critical people and supplies first, leave the rest to official authorities. Zhao Zilong pulled a notebook and pen out from under the coffee table. First, capital. Stockpiling supplies costs money, and while your dimension can hold endless goods, we need cash or equivalent assets to buy them. How much savings do you have? Roughly 80,000 yuan, including wealth management products. I have 120,000 in military resettlement compensation, plus 50,000 in accumulated wages, 170,000 total. Zhao Zilong scribbled without lifting his head. Any other sources? How much could you get mortgaging this apartment? A man's name crossed Lin Bei's mind, Peng Jinliang, owner of a credit company, a former corrupt middleman who specialized in predatory high-interest loans. A combined property mortgage and consumer loan could net roughly 300,000 yuan. I know someone who can lend us the money, Lin Bei said. The interest rate is brutal, though. Zhao Zilong shot him a sharp glance. At a time like this, who cares about interest? We only need to survive long enough to pay it back. Lin Bei thought it over and conceded he was right. Zhao Zilong jotted Peng Jinliang's name beside the line marked capital. Second, a safe compound. This tiny apartment can't shelter many people. We need a standalone house, preferably with a yard we can renovate. Reinforce and raise the perimeter walls. Build a large enough basement to store long-term survival supplies. Lin Bei pulled out his phone and opened a real estate app to browse villas. Several second-hand detached homes on the urban fringe had sat unsold for 6 months. Third, people. Your parents, my parents, your little sister, we have to bring all of them here. Zhao Zilong fell quiet for a few seconds. Fourth, weapons. I'm a veteran, but I own no firearms. I steer clear of the black market, yet I know former army brothers with connections to unregulated self-defense tools. Not guns, but far more effective than wooden bats. Lin Bei studied him. Do you really think we can wrap all this up in 15 days? Zhao Zilong set down his pen and lifted his head. His buzz-cut, sun-darkened neck and sharp, concise eyes matched his terse speech. We can. I'll help you every step of the way. But we start at dawn tomorrow. Get some sleep tonight. You're in no shape to drive tomorrow, and no one will recover your body if you crash. Lin Bei was utterly drained. He collapsed onto the sofa, and Zhao Zilong dragged a blanket from the bedroom and tossed it over him. Before sleep claimed him entirely, a stray thought surfaced. When they'd entered the pocket dimension earlier, something had stirred along the edge of the first floor, not inside the pagoda, but at the far boundary of the black spirit soil. Faint light seemed to pulse up through the dirt, flickering on and off. But exhaustion overwhelmed him. He slipped into unconsciousness. The next morning, Lin Bei woke on the sofa. Sunlight seeped through gaps in the drawn curtains. Zhao Zilong's notebook lay open on the coffee table, 4 lines scrawled across the first page. Capital, Peng Jinliang, visit today, shelter. Suburban villa, 3 listings saved on app, view in the morning, people, parents, Xiaoxi. Begin picking them up tomorrow, weapons. Contact old Joe, meet this afternoon. A small addendum sat beneath the handwriting, written after Lin Bay had fallen asleep. 5. That chicken issue. Resolve once tasks 1 through 4 are finished. Lin Bay stared at the 5th line for several seconds. Chicken? What chicken? He was still confused when the front door lock clicked. Zhao Zilong stepped inside carrying 2 bags of steamed buns, 2 cups of soybean milk, and a rolled-up blueprint tucked under his arm. Awake? Breakfast's here. He set the buns on the coffee table and slid the soybean milk toward Lin Bay. We leave right after eating. First stop is Pang Jinliang's office to sign the loan papers, then we tour the villas. I stayed up all night marking the 3 candidate locations on a map. Once it's very close to a wholesale market, we'll prioritize that one. Lin Bei picked up a meat bun and took a bite. It tasted rich and savory. Zhao Zilong sat down, watching Lin Bei's troubled expression. You're worried about how to break the news to your folks, aren't you? Lin Bei nodded, chewing slowly. I've already thought up a cover story. Zhao Zilong unrolled the blueprint across the coffee table, a base renovation sketch he'd hand-drawn overnight. It clearly labeled the perimeter wall layout, basement structure, supply storage zones, and entry and exit points. Tell your parents you accepted a new job out of town, and the company provided staff housing. Invite them over to help inspect the property, get them settled first. I'll talk to Xiaoxi and tell her to book the earliest train ticket home. Zhao Zilong rolled the blueprint back up. Let's go. We've got endless tasks, and time waits for no one. Lin Bei stood and stuffed the last bite of bun into his mouth. As he headed for the door, he grabbed the TV remote off the coffee table and held it for 2 seconds. He focused his will, and the remote vanished, stored safely on the pagoda's first floor. Zhao Zilong witnessed the action, but said nothing, simply pulling open the front door. Wait a second. Lin Bei paused at the threshold, suddenly remembering something. What's the 5th point in your notebook about a chicken? Zhao Zilong glanced back at him. What chicken? I never wrote a 5th point. Lin Bei froze. He walked back to the coffee table and flipped open the notebook. Only 4 lines of Zhao Zilong's handwriting filled the first page, plain and unmodified. Lin Bei stared at the page for a long time. What's wrong? Zhao Zilong called from the doorway. Nothing. Lin Bei closed the notebook and slipped it into his coat pocket. Let's go. First, we see Pang Jinliang. Pang Jinliang's credit company occupied the 11th floor of an old office building in the eastern district of the city. Zhao Zilong stood inside the elevator, watching the floor numbers tick upward one by one. What's this guy's background? A bagman, Lin Bei replied. He used to run repossessed car loans, then branched out into anything that turned a profit, mortgages, personal credit loans usury. He'll lend money to anyone as long as they can cover the interest. You know him well? I borrowed from him once 2 years ago, when Mom was hospitalized and I needed cash fast. A friend referred me, and I paid every cent back. Lin Bei paused. But with people like him, even clearing your debt means you still owe him a favor. He figures if you've touched his money, you're beholden to him forever. The elevator doors slid open. At the end of the corridor stood a glass door emblazoned with gilded characters, Jinliang Financial Services Company, Ltd. Some of the lettering faded and peeling. A heavily made-up woman sat at the front desk, not bothering to lift her eyes when Lin Bei walked in. Here to see Mr. Pang. We have an appointment. The woman lazily picked up the intercom phone, mumbled a few words, then jerked her chin toward the inner corridor. Pang Jinliang's office was spacious, furnished with a massive executive desk and leather swivel chair. Hanging on the wall behind him was a calligraphy scroll bearing the phrase integrity as the foundation. Pang Jinliang himself sat in the chair smoking a cigar. In his early 40s, his hair slicked shiny with hair gel, he had a round face. It made him look as genial as a restaurant owner out to make honest money, but his eyes sized everyone up as if appraising merchandise. Shaolin, what a rare visitor. Pang Jinliang stood and extended a hand. Haven't seen you since you settled that last debt. Short on cash again. Lin Bei shook his hand. Pang Jinliang's palm was damp and clammy, as if he'd just pulled it out of something warm and moist. I need capital to tide me over a business matter. Sit. Pang Jinliang gestured to the chair across from him, his gaze flicking over Zhao Zilong. And this gentleman is? My brother-in-law, Zhao Zilong. Zhao Zilong nodded once, saying nothing. Pang Jinliang gave him an extra glance before his grin returned full force. All right, how much working capital do you need this time? 500,000. Pang Jinliang raised an eyebrow. $500,000 was trivial to him, yet he knew Lin Bei's circumstances. An ordinary office worker drawing barely 10,000 yuan a month, whose only major asset was a tiny 40-square-meter apartment. 500,000, huh? Pang Jinliang leaned back in his chair and exhaled a cloud of cigar smoke. Shaolin, it's not that I won't help you. I know your situation. You paid off those 80,000 yuan from before without a hitch. But what collateral do you have to cover this sum? My apartment. That little flat won't appraise for 500,000 at best. It's only worth 350. Pang Jinliang tapped ash from his cigar. I can advance you 300,000 against it at market interest rates, 3% monthly. What else do you have to cover the remaining 200,000? Lin Bay fell silent for a beat. I've got another property, he said. My parents own an old house back in our hometown. It's dated, but it's in a decent location. Pang Jinliang's eyes lit up instantly. He set down his cigar and sat up straight. Put both properties up as collateral? Yes. When do you need the funds? Today. Pang Jinliang stared at him for 3 full seconds, then broke into a genuine smile, clearly delighted by the lucrative deal. Shaolin, I never realized how bold you could be. I'll have my staff draw up the contracts, and you'll have the money by this afternoon. But let's get the ugly truth out front first. 3% monthly interest. If you fail to repay within 3 months, compound interest will accrue. And both houses will officially belong to the Pang family. I understand. Lin Bei stood. Call me once the contracts are ready. As they stepped out of the office, Zhao Zilong lowered his voice. 3% monthly interest? He might as well rob people outright. Robbery's illegal. Lin Bei pressed the elevator call button. This loophole isn't. Outside the office building, the sunlight blazed harshly. Zhao Zilong pulled out his phone to check the time. 9:20 a.m. Let's go look at the villa. 3 second-hand detached villas were listed on a real estate app on the suburban fringe, all sitting unsold for half a year. The realtor showed them the first 2, one with cracked exterior walls, another plagued by severe basement water seepage. When they reached the third property, Lin Bei stood in the courtyard for a full minute before turning to Zhao Zilong. This one's the one. The villa was modestly sized yet laid out logically, a standalone home enclosed by a 2-meter brick wall. It could easily be heightened and reinforced. Its basement spanned nearly 60 square meters with fully installed ventilation ducts. It could be easily renovated into a long-term safe haven. Most crucially, its location was unbeatable. The city's largest agricultural wholesale market sat 2 kilometers away, stocked with grain, oil, fresh produce, and daily necessities of every kind. Lin Bei mentally calculated the distance. 2 kilometers sat right on the edge of his mental perception range. If his spirit field expanded a little more by the final day, he could clear out the entire market without ever stepping foot outside the villa gate. What's the asking price? Zhao Zilong asked the realtor. The owner's desperate for a full cash sale. 8,500,000 yuan. Zhao Zilong glanced at Lin Bei, who nodded once. The 500,000 loan combined with their combined savings would cover the cost in full. We'll sign the contract, Lin Bei said. The realtor froze. 8 years in the trade, he'd never met a client who finalized a purchase less than 10 minutes after viewing a property. He opened his mouth to ask a question, but met Zhao Zilong's sharp gaze and swallowed his words. On the drive away after signing the paperwork, Lin Bei called his parents. He fabricated an excuse. He landed a new job with company-provided housing on the outskirts and wanted them to come inspect the property and stay for a few days. Lin's father asked over the line, "What line of work? What's the compensation like?" Lin Bei recited the pre-planned lie he'd rehearsed. Once he finished, his father simply replied, "Fine, we'll catch the early morning bus tomorrow." His mother spoke up in the background. "Does Xiaoxi know about this?" "I'll give her a call," Lin Bei said, hanging up and handing the phone to Zhao Zilong. "You talk to her." Zhao Zilong dialed Lin Xiaoxi's number. It rang 5 times before she picked up, her voice thick with grogginess. "Hello? Brother? It's me. Zilong? Why are you using my brother's phone?" "Xiaoxi, listen to me." Zhao Zilong kept his tone steady. "Your brother's dealing with something urgent. You need to come back home right away." "What's wrong?" Lin Xiaoxi's drowsiness vanished instantly. "Is my brother hurt?" "He's fine. We'll explain everything once you get here." Silence stretched across the line for several seconds before her voice dropped, tight with worry. "Is something terrible going to happen?" Zhao Zilong avoided a direct answer. "Trust me. Come back." "All right," Lin Xiaoxi said. "I'll book a ticket for today, arrive tonight." He hung up and handed the phone back to Lin Bei, who spotted 2 faint sweat smudges on the screen. It were fingerprints left by Zhao Zilong. The ex-soldier's hand had been slick with nerves. He and Lin Xiaoxi had dated all through high school, and he'd never spoken to her with such grave gravity before. "Thanks," Lin Bei said. Zhao Zilong said nothing in reply. He pulled open the driver's side door, slid behind the wheel, and turned the ignition. The beat-up Jetta sputtered to life and merged back onto the road they'd come from. They did not head back to their apartment. Zhao Zilong cranked the steering wheel and merged onto the Ring Expressway. Lin Bei sat in the passenger seat clutching his phone, the screen displaying a text he'd just sent his parents. "Dad, what time will you arrive tomorrow?" "I'll come pick you up." "Where are we going?" Lin Bei asked. "Scout supply locations." "What supplies?" Zhao Zilong did not answer directly. He pulled a crumpled sheet of paper from his pocket and unfolded it one-handed. It was a city map with 4 locations circled in red ink, each marked with handwritten notes. North City Grain Oil Market, South Ring Hardware Mall, Western Suburb Building Materials Market, East Ring Agricultural Wholesale Market. The handwriting was Zhao Zilong's, neat and deliberate. When did you draw this? Last night, after you fell asleep, Zhao Zilong said. Your spatial storage can hold endless stock, so we're stocking up on everything we can get our hands on. But we won't buy everything today. The loan money hasn't hit our accounts yet. Today we just map out every route, market sizes, storage zones, security camera blind spots, entry and exit points. When the day comes to gather supplies, we can't waste a single second. Lin Bay spread the map across his lap. The 4 circled hubs were linked by blue lines tracing a route. It deliberately bypassed all main thoroughfares covered by traffic cameras, rather than taking the shortest path. Zhao Zilong had marked alternate turnoffs at every mandatory crossroads with small arrows. Were you reconnaissance in the military? Logistics unit. They train logistics for this sort of planning? Logistics personnel still need to know how to transport cargo discreetly, Zhao Zilong explained. Especially shipments you can't report to command. Lin Bei shot him a glance, but did not press further. For the final 2 years of Zhao Zilong's service, he'd never spoken a word about his duties over the phone. Even when drunk, he'd only mutter nothing worth talking about before passing out. Lin Bei had once chalked it up to military regulations, but now he suspected there was far more to it. They drove half an hour along the ring road, traveling from the eastern district all the way to the north. Zhao Zilong parked outside Fujiang Agricultural Market, and the pair wandered through the facility. The market was enormous, roughly half the size of a football field, split clearly into sections for grain and oil, fresh produce, frozen goods, and daily sundries. What will the security cameras capture when I pull items into storage? Zhao Zilong asked. Lin Bei thought it over. They'll simply vanish out of frame. If I move quickly, sweeping an entire row of shelves with my mental power in one pass. The footage will make it look as if every product on that shelf emptied simultaneously. Then it won't look like theft, Zhao Zilong said. It'll look like a supernatural occurrence. Will investigators trace it back to us? Who's going to review hours of surveillance footage mere hours before the apocalypse hits? Lin Bei fell silent. Standing amid the bustling market crowds, he watched strangers rushing about their trivial daily errands. They were completely unaware of the world as they knew it would collapse in 15 days. A strange, heavy feeling settled over him, as if he stood on a sheet of ice slowly splitting apart. Everyone else continued running blindly forward, only he could see the spreading cracks beneath their feet. Let's go, he said. They visited the remaining 3 supply hubs one after another, finishing their reconnaissance as dusk fell. What's next? Lin Bei asked. We need to set up basic fortifications at the villa before your parents arrive. Zhao Zilong restarted the engine. The loan will clear tomorrow morning. I'll head to the building materials market to haul cement, steel rebar, and sandbags tomorrow am. You hit the grain market in the afternoon to stockpile long-lasting staples, rice, flour, cooking oil, compressed biscuits. Buy every available unit you can find and hold on to all receipts. Why keep receipts? Zhao Zilong turned to look at him. If you show up buying dozens of tons of grain without formal receipts, market regulators will come knocking before the apocalypse even arrives. Lin Bei had no retort. The rule of law still stood firm. He'd nearly forgotten that reality hadn't unraveled yet. Lao Lin. How fast do crops grow in your spirit field? Lin Bei suddenly realized he'd never fully explained the spirit field to Zhao Zilong. He recounted the discovery he'd made inside his spatial storage the previous night. Ordinary seeds sprouted and fully matured within a single day. The resulting fruits and vegetables glowed faintly, larger than standard produce, with an indescribable sweet, clean flavor when eaten. Zhao Zilong listened without speaking for 5 full seconds. If we feed your parents these spirit-grown crops starting now, will it stop them mutating when the apocalypse strikes? Lin Bei blinked, caught off guard by the question. From the information carved into the Jade Pendant, he recalled slowly, ordinary humans face a 40% chance of mutating when the sky rift opens. But if their physical constitution is strengthened and they acclimate to spiritual energy beforehand, that risk drops substantially. To what percentage? It never gave an exact number, Lin Bei mused. But if we let mom and dad eat spirit crops for 2 full weeks, their odds will definitely be far better than doing nothing at all. Zhao Zilong nodded. He dropped the subject, yet Lin Bei understood his unspoken thought. The spirit crops weren't merely for boosting their own strength. They were their best chance to protect the people they cared about most. Back at their apartment, Lin Bei's first act upon entering was to step into his spatial storage. He knelt beside the spirit field, staring at the handful of bok choy seeds he'd scattered casually the previous day. In just 1 daylight cycle, they'd fully matured. He plucked 1 leafy stalk and lifted it to his nose. No earthy, muddy odor, only a crisp, honeyed green scent. He tore off a small leaf and bit into it. The flesh was crisp, and as juice burst across his tongue, a pure, subtle sweetness spread down his throat. It transformed into a faint warm current that drifted through his esophagus and settled in his dantian. He stared at the bok choy stalk in his hand for a long moment. Stepping back out of spatial storage, he cooked a bowl of noodles, chopping half the spirit bok choy to toss into the broth. Mid-meal, his phone buzzed with a WeChat message from Lin Xiaoxi. Brother, I booked a ticket for 2 p.m. tomorrow, arriving at 6 p.m. Have Zilong come pick me up. Lin Bay typed back a simple, got it, then hesitated and added another line, don't be scared on the trip. Everything will be fine. Lin Xiaoxi replied instantly, that line alone is making me nervous. He huffed a quiet laugh. His little sister had never once believed him when he claimed nothing was wrong. The next morning, Peng Jinliang's office called to confirm the loan had been deposited. Lin Bei checked his account balance, over 800,000 yuan. Combined with their personal savings and the proceeds from selling his car, they had nearly 1.2 million yuan total. Zhao Zilong left at dawn for the building materials market, returning with a truck full of cement and steel rebar unloaded directly in the villa's courtyard. Lin Bei headed straight for the North City grain oil market. He purchased stock from dozens of separate vendors, never buying excessive quantities from a single stall to qualify for wholesale pricing each time. He had shopkeepers haul the cargo to his vehicle, drove to a camera-free dead-end alley to transfer all goods into spatial storage, then moved on to the next stall. He spent the entire afternoon restocking enough rice, wheat flour, cooking oil, and compressed biscuits to sustain more than a dozen people for 2 to 3 years. As evening arrived, he took the bus to the train station. Lin Xiaoxi emerged from the arrival gate, wearing a white hoodie with her hair tied in a high ponytail. There was still a hint of youthful softness to her features, yet her sharp eyes locked onto Lin Bei instantly amid the crowd. She slowed her pace as she drew near, sizing him up head to toe before glancing past him. Brother. You've lost weight. And Zilong's not with you. He's busy renovating the villa. What villa? Where did you get the money to buy a villa? Lin Xiaoxi narrowed her eyes, the exact focused expression Lin Bei wore when calculating critical plans. You told me over the phone you switched jobs, and now you own a villa. Don't tell me you got roped into a pyramid scheme. It's nothing like that. Then what is it? Xiaoxi. He halted and turned to face her. Lin Xiaoxi stopped 2 steps behind him. Passengers streamed back and forth across the platform, paying them no mind at all. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen all the way through without interrupting me. Okay. In 15 days, a global catastrophe will break out. Lin Bei lowered his voice to a murmur. It won't be an earthquake or flood. The sky will split open, and the substance pouring through the rifts will turn 60% of all humans and animals on this planet into mindless monsters. A portion of the surviving population will awaken unique supernatural abilities. Lin Xiaoxi parted her lips, then clamped them shut again without speaking. This ancestral jade pendant I wear, Lin Bei tugged at his shirt to reveal the golden marking etched around his wrist, began overheating 15 days ago. It gave me the exact timeline and access to a spatial storage dimension. I've verified every word, it's all real. Zilong has seen it with his own eyes too. Lin Xiaoxi stared at the golden mark on his wrist for a long time before lifting her gaze back to him. So the two of you have been acting secretive these past few days, prepping for the end of the world? Lin Bei nodded. Lin Xiaoxi drew a deep breath. To Lin Bei's surprise, she did not argue, nor reach for his forehead to check for a fever. She simply fixed her gaze on him and asked her next question. What about Mom and Dad? We're picking them up tomorrow. Zilong's parents? The day after tomorrow. What about everyone else? Lin Bei fell silent. How many people are you planning to save? Lin Bei tightened his grip on the suitcase handle. As many as I possibly can. Lin Xiaoxi stepped forward and took the luggage handle from his grasp. Let's go, she said. Aren't you going to ask anything else? Lin Xiaoxi dragged the suitcase toward the station exit without glancing back. We'll talk once we get home. Lin Bei watched her retreating figure, suddenly realizing his little sister had matured far more than he'd ever realized. That night, in the villa's basement, Lin Bei told Lin Xiaoxi everything about the spirit field. She raised no doubts, only watched as he pulled a stalk of spirit bok choy out of spatial storage and placed it in her palm. She studied it closely for a long moment before tearing off a leaf and tasting it. When she finished chewing, she looked up at him. You said the stuff improves physical constitution? Yes. Then starting tomorrow, Mom and Dad will eat this 3 times a day without fail. Lin Bei stared at her. What? Lin Xiaoxi shrugged. You handle stockpiling supplies, I'll handle cooking. Clear division of labor. The clanging scrape of steel rebar being hauled echoed from outside, ringing loud through the night air. Lin Bei stood at the shelter's basement window, gazing out at the half-finished villa. The courtyard wall only stood half a meter high, its cement foundation freshly laid. Piles of rebar and sandbags littered the yard, untended tree branches swaying wildly in the wind. This place was far from a fully fortified survival base yet. But at the very least, they'd laid the first brick of their defenses. Lin Bay got up long before dawn. His parents were taking the early long-distance coach. He drove Zhao Zilong's beat-up Jetta to the passenger station entrance to wait for them. Dad Lin stepped out first, hauling a woven plastic sack bulging with homegrown vegetables from their village plot. Mom Lin followed behind, clutching a plastic shopping bag. She spotted Lin Bay from afar and immediately started chattering. Why'd they move the station? Last time we came it was still in the Old Town district. You've gotten so thin, are you working overtime nonstop again? Lin Bay took the heavy sack that dug into his palms. He glanced inside, radishes, cabbages, green onions, plus 2 old hens with their feet tied tight. Mom, why'd you bring live chickens? Your dad said your new job means you're not eating well enough. We had 2 extra hens at home, so we brought them for you to stew into soup. Mom Lin patted her bag. I also packed red dates and wolfberries to nourish your body. Dad Lin said nothing, standing at the station gate and sizing up his surroundings. He'd worked as a construction foreman for decades before retiring to farm back home. Spending his whole life around steel rebar and concrete had left him with a habit. No matter where he went, he'd first study the building structures. After scanning the suburban streetscape, his gaze settled back on Lin Bay. That dorm the company gave you, does it belong to your firm? Sort of. What's the name of the company? I'll tell you later. Lin Bay heaved the sack into the trunk. The 2 hens clucked softly inside. Let's get in the car first. They drove headed for the villa. Mom Lin sat in the back seat, rambling nonstop about how many eggs the village hens had laid, the neighbor Old Lee's son's wedding, and the new county highway under construction. Lin Bay replied half-heartedly, glancing at the rearview mirror every few seconds. Dad Lin rode shotgun and only spoke 3 lines the whole drive. The first, this car isn't yours. The second, we're not heading toward the city center. The third came when the villa gate came into view. This collective dorm you mentioned, where is it? Lin Bay pulled into the villa's courtyard. The concrete base formwork for the perimeter wall hadn't been stripped yet. Links of steel rebar jutted out from the wall crest like untrimmed branches. Sandbags and cement sacks littered the yard, with dozens of sacks of rice stacked against the corner. Mom Lin climbed out of the car, stared at the large house, then the stockpiles in the yard, before turning to Lin Bay. This isn't a dorm, Lin Bay said. I bought it. Dad, Mom, let's talk inside. He led them into the living room. Lin Xiaoxi was already up, wearing an apron and heating breakfast in the kitchen. Zhao Zilong climbed up from the basement and nodded respectfully at Lin's parents. Uncle Lin, Aunt Li. Dad Lin sat rigidly on the sofa, posture stiff, as if presiding over a construction site's safety briefing. Mom Lin sat beside him, still clutching her plastic bag full of medicinal ingredients. Speak your piece, Dad Lin said. His voice was quiet, yet every word landed heavy as nails hammered into a board. A new job, company dorm, inviting your mother and me over to help check out housing. Explain all of this clearly first. Lin Bay stood across from them by the coffee table and fell silent for several seconds. He'd rehearsed countless cover stories on the drive over, but staring straight into his father's eyes, he suddenly knew none of the lies would work. His dad had overseen countless contractors in 30 years of construction work. He could spot a falsehood the second it left someone's mouth. So he told them the whole truth, no deception. There's no new job. I quit my old position. Why? Because a catastrophe will strike in 15 days. He told them about the Jade Pendant, skipping overly intricate details and holding back the secrets of his spatial storage, spirit farm, and miniature pagoda, only explaining that the ancestral jade had grown hot and granted him visions of the future. He described the sky splitting open, a global cataclysm, and humans and animals mutating into violent monsters. As he spoke, even he thought his words sounded absurd, like ramblings of a madman, yet he told them everything from start to finish. When he finished speaking, Mom Lin's knuckles whitened as she squeezed the bag of red dates and wolfberries tight in her grip. Dad Lin did not look at him. His gaze fixed on the half-empty glass of water on the coffee table, a single tea leaf floating on the surface. Zhao Zilong stepped forward at the right moment to back him up. Uncle Lin, I've seen it with my own eyes. Old Lin really isn't an ordinary person. Dad Lin lifted his eyes to study Zhao Zilong. You're a discharged soldier. Is everything you said the truth? It's 100% true, Zhao Zilong replied. The timeline and details all line up. I heard whispers of odd phenomena back during my military service too. Dad Lin sank into a long silence. Mom Lin regained her composure as she tugged his sleeve anxiously until he finally spoke. You said you can prove it. Lin Bay nodded. He rested his palm beside the half-full water glass on the table and focused his will. The cup vanished without a trace. Mom Lin gasped sharply and Dad Lin narrowed his eyes. A heartbeat later, the glass reappeared exactly where it had sat, the floating tea leaf not even rippled. Dad Lin stared at the water cup, then reached out, picked it up, and drained every drop in one gulp. This disaster hits in 15 days? Yes. These mutated creatures you mentioned, all people will turn? Not everyone, only a portion. But no one can tell ahead of time if they'll change. Lin Bay met their gazes. That's why I brought you both here. This villa will be our permanent home from now on, and I'll reinforce it to withstand the end of the world. Mom Lin's eyes welled with tears. She did not spout lines of disbelief. Instead, she grasped Lin Bay's hand and stroked the back of it over and over. She knew her son would never lie to her. Dad Lin set the empty cup down and stood. Show me the perimeter wall. Lin Bay walked him on a full circuit around the villa grounds. Dad Lin traced the wall twice, tapped the concrete foundations with his knuckles, and knelt to check how deep the steel rebar was buried. When he stood back up, he brushed cement dust off his palms. If you're short-handed on construction work, I'll pitch in. I've done this line of work for 30 years, and for once I get to build something to protect my own son. Lin Bay froze. He'd agonized for weeks over how to convince his parents to move in, how to ease their fear of the apocalypse, how to make them accept his bizarre secrets. But his father's first thought was the thickness of the wall's foundation. Dad, no need for extra words. Dad Lin started walking back toward the house. Your mom brought 2 live hens. Tell your sister to stew 1 for lunch. Eat your fill. We got days of bricklaying ahead of us. This is a massive construction project, and your brother-in-law, the ex-soldier, can't handle it all alone. Lin Bay stood alone in the courtyard as the morning sun climbed high, bleaching the stacked cement sacks white. Inside the house, he heard Mom Lin chattering to Lin Xiaoxi about how her son was too thin and needed more nourishment, while his father discussed adding extra support beams to the wall corners with Zhao Zilong. 12 days remained until the cataclysm. He'd safely brought his parents to the shelter. 2 more people still needed rescuing, Zhao Zilong's mother and father. That same afternoon, Zhao Zilong left to fetch his own parents. They lived in an old residential district in the southern part of the city, a run-down apartment allocated by their former workplace. Its stairwell perpetually thick with the smell of coal stoves and aged newspapers. Zhao Zilong told them a simple cover story. Xiaoxi's brother bought a large new villa on the outskirts, and he wants you two to come help plan the renovations. Uncle Zhao was a retired medical orderly, a man of few words with razor-sharp observation skills. The first thing he did upon entering the villa was not tour the rooms, but inventory the supplies. How much rice was stockpiled, how much water stored, what materials littered the yard. After a full walkthrough, he pulled Zhao Zilong aside and spoke a line that caught the younger man off guard. What are you preparing for? Zhao Zilong blinked. Dad, how did you figure it out? Uncle Zhao gestured at the sandbags stacked across the yard. Sandbags have no place in home renovations. These are shock-absorbing fortifications. I served in a field hospital in my youth. I recognize this kind of survival setup. Spit it out. How much can you tell me? Zhao Zilong hesitated briefly, then shared all the information he'd learned from Lin Bay, sticking only to what he was permitted to reveal: the splitting sky, global catastrophe, and human-animal mutation. He said nothing of the Jade Pendant or spatial storage. Those were Lin Bay's private secrets, not his to disclose. After listening through everything, Uncle Zhao sat on the sofa for a long stretch of time, then stood and slapped his thighs. You've made the right choice. He sighed. Just keep telling your mother we're here to help renovate the new house. If you need any medical or logistical support from me, speak up without hesitation. Down the hallway, Aunt Zhao chatted cheerfully with Mom Lin as they sorted vegetables in the kitchen. She knew nothing of the impending disaster, gushing about how well laid out the villa was. Only complaining that the piles of sandbags in the yard ruined the aesthetics and telling Zhao Zilong to haul them away someday soon. For dinner, 2 dining tables were pushed together to seat 8 people, the 4 Lins, 3 Zhaos, plus Lin Bei's cousin Chen Hao, whom he'd invited over to lend an extra hand. Half the dishes were cooked with spirit-grown produce, stewed cabbage and vermicelli, braised spirit radish with pork, and a huge pot of old hen soup simmered with red dates and wolfberries. The chicken Mom Lin had brought from their village. Mom ladled a full bowl for every person, insisting the broth was vital for replenishing vitality. Mid-meal, Dad Lin suddenly set down his chopsticks. Have you sent a formal warning to the official authorities? Every voice in the room fell silent instantly. You said you can foresee this disaster. Dad Lin fixed his gaze on Lin Bay. A crisis of this scale cannot be weathered by just our small group alone. The state's institutional power is not powerless. If they receive advance notice, they can implement countermeasures. At minimum, ordinary civilians can prepare, and countless lives will be spared. Lin Bay set his rice bowl down. He'd mulled over this idea many times, but never settled on a plan of action. He'd spent months quietly stockpiling supplies after receiving the premonitions, terrified exposing his abilities early would bring calamity down on his family. Protecting his loved ones had always been his top priority. Yet his father's words rang true. The nation's systems were not inert. I'll find a way, he promised. Anonymous submission. No trace leading back to me. Zhao Zilong chimed in beside him. A comrade I served with now works as a driver at the Municipal Emergency Management Bureau. If we only relay the intelligence without disclosing our source, we might route the information through a middleman to avoid detection. Lin Bay nodded. We'll handle it tomorrow. That night, Lin Bay entered his spatial storage. A new batch of baby cabbages had sprouted in the spirit farm, their leaves etched with denser golden runes than the previous harvest. He realized the spirit farm automatically boosted the quality of each new crop cycle based on how much spiritual energy the plants absorbed. This batch held noticeably higher spiritual essence than the last. With a steady supply of spirit vegetables, his parents and Zhao Zilong's folks could boil a handful into soup each day, laying a solid foundation for their physical stamina before the apocalypse struck. He knelt beside the farm plot when he spotted subtle movement beneath the dark soil, like earthworms tunneling upward. He brushed the dirt aside with his finger and uncovered cabbage seeds he'd planted only the day prior, already sprouting shoots twice as thick as ordinary cabbage seedlings. The sprouts wriggled faintly, living and pulsing as if an invisible force tugged them skyward. He stared at the strange moving sprouts, lost in thought, when a soft rustle echoed behind him. He spun around. A faint shadow flickered in the pitch-black fringe of the spatial realm, tiny, yet blindingly fast. It was no cat. The silhouette bore wings, the gust of beating wings barely brushing past before vanishing in an instant. Lin Bay stood straight. Come out from hiding. No reply echoed from the darkness. He waited a moment, chose not to pursue the mystery creature, and stepped out of his spatial storage. It was 2 a.m. Lin Bay hunched over his computer, the monitor's cold glow washing over his face. He drafted his warning in plain, unadorned language, laying out 3 core details: the exact time, roughly 5 a.m., May 12th, the nature of the catastrophe, a massive energy shockwave originating deep beneath the ocean, with global repercussions, and the aftermath, humans and animals at risk of violent, aggressive mutation. He avoided loaded terms like sky split or apocalypse, instead framing the event as an unknown energy release potentially triggered by geological or celestial activity. The tone read like a civilian's unspecialized civil defense alert, not a doomsday manifesto. At the bottom of the email, he wrote only 8 characters: all living beings suffer, may humanity endure. He read the message 3 times over, then clicked send. The recipient was the Municipal Emergency Bureau's public submission mailbox. The email was routed through a temporary overseas server account Zhao Zilong's former military comrade had arranged for them, untraceable to any individual user. Once the message sent, he leaned back in his office chair and stared at the message sent successfully notification for a long time. All living beings suffer. He'd once thought that phrase overly melodramatic, but not anymore. In 15 days, countless families would watch their loved ones twist into monsters. Countless ordinary people would be torn apart on the streets before they could comprehend what was happening. He could not save every soul on the planet, but at minimum, he had delivered a warning. Whether the authorities chose to believe it was out of his control. The next morning, Lin Bay arranged a private meeting with one person, Shin Ruobing. They met at a tea restaurant near their old office. When Lin Bay arrived, Shin Ruobing was already seated by the window, wearing a dark navy windbreaker with her hair cut shorter than it had been the previous month. An untouched glass of lemon water sat on the table before her. She lifted her chin slightly in silent greeting when she saw him walk in. You took an extended personal leave, she stated flatly, not posing it as a question. She had full access to the company's HR system records. I did. Lin Bay sat across from her and ordered a glass of plain boiled water. I have pressing matters to attend to. What matters? Just listen to everything I have to say first. Shin Ruobing shot him a glance. She possessed striking beauty, yet her icy demeanor made most people keep their distance unconsciously. Lin Bay had mentored her for 2 full years, walking her through spreadsheet drafting, contract reviews, and client negotiations from her very first day at the firm. They shared a close, trusting bond. But her observational skills far surpassed the average person's. She could deduce a business partner's hidden motives from 3 minor inconsistencies in a contract's wording, or guess whether Lin Bay had pulled an all-nighter simply by judging the clothes he wore that morning. So she said nothing, slid her lemon water to the side, folded her hands atop the table, and waited patiently for him to speak. Lin Bay shared every permissible detail, the coming catastrophe warning, the exact timeline, and the likely horrific consequences. He omitted all mention of the Jade Pendant, spatial storage, and the origin of his foresight, only adding one line: I have an extremely credible confidential source. This is no prank. Shin Ruobing fell into a lengthy silence. You know something no one else does, don't you? Lin Bay avoided a direct answer. Your father has extensive industry and government connections. He's likely caught wind of strange rumors too. Go home and ask him. If he also senses something deeply wrong, your family needs to start preparing immediately. You're worrying about me? I'm worrying about a friend. Shin Ruobing studied his face. No extra emotion crossed her cold features, yet her fingers tightened hard around the cuff of her windbreaker beneath the table. She stood, grabbed her handbag, and paused at the restaurant door without turning back to look at him. Take care of yourself. That same evening, at the Shin family residence, Shin Bowen sat in his study, facing his daughter, who had just returned home. 53 years old, Shin Bowen was one of the city's largest construction material suppliers, a self-made man who'd started hauling goods on a tricycle before building 3 full manufacturing plants. He'd meet more scheming, cunning people over his lifetime than his daughter had eaten meals. After listening to Shin Ruobing recount every word Lin Bay had shared, he did not dismiss the young man as delusional. Nor did he immediately pick up the phone to mobilize his assets. He simply removed his reading glasses, set them on his desk, and remained silent for 5 full minutes. Then he dialed a contact's number. Loudly, I asked you to discreetly look into that young man Lin Bay who works at Ruobing's company. Dig deeper into him now. What has he been occupied with lately? Who has he met? And are there any large fund transfers under his name? After hanging up, he turned to Shin Ruobing. You believe his warning? Shin Ruobing replied without hesitation. He would never joke about something this grave. Shin Bowen nodded. He'd always trusted his daughter's sharp eye for judging character. She was rarely fooled by empty promises. Yet the stakes of this revelation were astronomically high. Trust alone was not enough to act. Shortly afterward, Lao Li's full investigation report landed on his desk. Lin Bay, 26 years old. No powerful officials in his family lineage for 3 generations. His only property was a 40 square meter small apartment, monthly salary under 10,000 yuan. Half a month prior, he suddenly mortgaged his apartment to secure a high-interest loan, purchasing a suburban villa that he was renovating around the clock. Workers raised the perimeter walls, reinforced the basement, pouring excessive volumes of steel and concrete nonstop. His brother-in-law, the discharged soldier, spent every day scouring construction material markets, hauling truckloads of supplies back to the villa. Simultaneously, he purchased massive stockpiles of grain, oil, rice, and flour, far exceeding any normal household consumption rate. Shin Bowen finished reading the report, lifted his teacup, then set it back down untouched. He's not just repeating rumors he heard from someone else, Shin Bowen concluded. He possesses absolute certainty about what's coming. What do you mean? A vague premonition would never drive a man to take out predatory high-interest loans. A regular office worker willing to mortgage his only home to borrow money means he harbors zero doubt about the impending disaster. Shin Bowen's gaze sharpened. Ruobing, your friend carries untold secrets he refuses to reveal. But we cannot disregard the warning he gave us. That night, Shin Bowen called an emergency executive meeting for his company. He did not disclose the full truth, only citing risk control protocols to launch a series of emergency measures, accelerate debt collection from clients, convert all liquid capital into tangible physical supplies, and begin transforming an unused company-owned warehouse plot on the outskirts into an emergency reserve shelter. At the same time, he leveraged his personal political and business connections to dig up classified information through multiple intermediaries. Top government departments had detected abnormal anomalies half a year prior, mass unusual animal migrations across the country, scattered reports of bizarre mutated creatures emerging in remote rural zones. Yet without consistent, verifiable patterns to explain the phenomena, all records had been suppressed and kept confidential from the public. Shin Bowen crushed out his cigarette in the ashtray. We must move fast. Time is running short. 3 days later, Lin Bay stood atop his villa's rooftop and spotted several bulldozers suddenly appearing on an empty lot not 500 meters from his home. The plot belonged to the Shin Group, an abandoned storage yard originally. Now bulldozers leveled the ground, trucks lined the roadside hauling precast concrete panels and steel girders. Laborers rushing back and forth as if racing against a catastrophic deadline. The outline of a temporary survival base had already taken shape: high perimeter walls, watchtowers, underground bunkers. Its defensive design mirrored Lin Bay's villa almost identically, yet scaled many times larger. Lin Bay stared at the construction site for a long while. He thought back to that afternoon at the tea restaurant, when Shin Ruobing had quietly told him, "Take care of yourself." She had not offered to ally with him openly, and the Shin family had never reached out to propose a formal partnership. But they'd built their survival base directly diagonally across from his villa, 500 meters away, a perfect distance to provide mutual backup during the apocalypse, while still maintaining full independent autonomy for both factions. Zhao Zilong climbed up from the basement and followed Lin Bay's line of sight toward the construction zone. That's the Shin family's project? They believe his warning then. Yep. 2 separate lines of action, the official government channels and the Shin Group, had both received his premonition alert. He had completed everything within his power to warn others. Only one massive undertaking remained to finish before the cataclysm arrived. He still had funds left to spend, insufficient grain stockpiled, and unfinished wall construction to complete. He turned to head back downstairs. I'm off to the wholesale market. I'll bring 2 more truckloads of supplies back today. The villa renovation entered its final sprint phase. Father Lin fully took over as chief construction supervisor and recounted all the building supplies Zhao Zilong had purchased. He told Lin Bay to restock materials at once and pick up several reinforcing steel bars on the way. It's not enough just to raise the perimeter wall. We need crossbeams too. If a massive beast slams into it, the wall will crumple like paper without cross supports. He squatted by the wall's foundation as he spoke, an unlit cigarette clamped between his teeth, holding a measuring tape stretched taut in one hand. Mother Lin and Aunt Zhao sorted all supplies by category meanwhile. Spiritual plant cultivation had formed a streamlined production line. Every 2 days, Lin Bei entered his spatial storage to harvest a batch of greens, then handed them over to Lin Xiaoxi for processing. Some were cooked straight into meals, while the rest were sliced thin, slow-dried over low heat, and ground into fine powder sealed in small cloth sacks. This was Lin Xiaoxi's idea. Fresh greens spoiled quickly, but dried plant powder had a long shelf life. It could be mixed with water, stirred into rice, or added to dishes, saving time and effort. Lin Bei stirred a spoonful of the spiritual plant powder into warm water and drank it. A warm, pure current of vital energy flowed unobstructed from his esophagus all the way down to his dantian. He immediately added dried spiritual plant powder to his long-term reserve checklist. Over these few days, Kunkin had fully treated the spatial realm as its personal home. It would loiter beside the spiritual farm plots when bored, occasionally sneaking a bite of a fully ripe spiritual tomato. Whenever Lin Bei caught it red-handed, it would turn its rear toward him, as if declaring, "This chicken is merely testing for poison on your behalf." Lin Bei inspected the spiritual farm yields twice and found Kunkin's thefts were actually minimal. It only targeted the most lush, spirit-rich ripe fruits and never damaged the root systems. The little creature knew restraint, just barely. On the afternoon of the 4th day, while Lin Bei was out purchasing goods in the countryside, he passed a livestock farm on the verge of closing down. The owner, a middle-aged man with a face etched with worry, explained that skyrocketing feed costs plus stray dogs constantly attacking his chickens had left him unable to stay afloat. He planned to sell off his remaining hundreds of chickens at a steep discount. Lin Bei had only intended to buy 2 sacks of feed, but as he stepped up to the chicken coops, a half-grown rooster with jet-black plumage and a single tuft of scarlet feathers atop its head suddenly flew over the fence and crashed straight into his leg. It then craned its neck and stared him dead in the eye. Its gaze was nothing like a chicken's, sharp and calculating, just like a petty thief locking onto a target in a crowd. The farm owner hurried over and warned Lin Bei the rooster had a violent temper from hatching, never lost a fight, and could break free of any cage. He advised Lin Bei not to provoke it. Lin Bei had no plans to buy live poultry at first, but when he met those shrewd, gleaming eyes, a thought stirred in his mind. He recalled the faint shadow he'd spotted lingering at the edge of his spatial realm that night. He tossed the rooster into his storage space. I could use a troublemaker like this over there. On the 5th night, all core team members gathered in the basement for a brief meeting. Lin Bei briefly recapped all current preparations, then Zhao Zilong supplemented details of the defensive deployment plan. Zhao Zilong taped a hand-drawn base defense layout to the wall, marking every person's post, responsibilities, and emergency evacuation routes with crystal clarity. If the perimeter wall is breached, everyone retreat to the basement. The basement door is reinforced steel, bolted shut from the inside. He circled the basement entrance on the diagram and scrawled a note beside it. Final line of defense, can hold out for a minimum of 48 hours. Father Lin spoke up, beyond a secure safe room, we need full emergency drills. Every single person must know their assigned tasks. In the face of catastrophe, panic and blind scattering pose a far greater danger than the disaster itself. Mother Lin chimed in from the side, what your father means is we need to run a full practice drill. So on the 6th morning, the base held its first full staff emergency drill. Father Lin banged a metal pot to simulate an alarm. Following Zhao Zilong's layout, everyone sprinted from their posts toward the basement. The first run took nearly 2 minutes, and one person lost a shoe mid-flight. The second attempt cut the time down to 1 minute 30 seconds. On the 3rd try, they finished in under a minute. Zhao Zilong stood in the basement timing them with a stopwatch, neither voicing satisfaction nor criticism. He simply pocketed the watch and said, we'll run it again tomorrow. Day 7, the first morning of the final week before the apocalypse. Lin Bei dragged a chair out into the yard and stared at the nearly completed perimeter wall encircling their compound. The main wall structure was finished, standing nearly 4 meters tall. Its base was reinforced with half a meter of crushed stone grout and double layers of steel rebar, thick enough to withstand a head-on collision from a light pickup truck. For observation, sentry posts were built into the wall, accessible directly from the second-floor balconies, granting unobstructed sight lines in all 4 directions. Stockpiles stored in the basement could sustain the dozen people living here for at least a full year. Counting the mountains of supplies still untouched in his spatial storage, they had enough rations to last 2 years. It felt surreal to think that exactly 7 days prior, he'd been sitting in a corporate conference room listening to manager Wang ramble about quarterly KPIs. A radio broadcast cut through the quiet, tuned to the official government channel. Zhao Zilong cranked the volume all the way up. The anchor spoke in standard Mandarin, his tone steady yet slightly faster than usual. The Ministry of Emergency Management released an official public notice today. Abnormal geological activity has been recorded across multiple regions recently. Expert analysis indicates a high risk of large-scale geological disasters occurring within the next 14 days. All citizens are advised to work from home, avoid unnecessary outdoor travel, and stockpile adequate daily necessities. Municipal emergency shelters across all districts are now fully operational. Please follow further announcements from local government authorities. The villa fell dead silent for several seconds once the broadcast ended. Uncle Zhao was the first to break the hush, the government stepping forward sooner than I expected. Father Lin nodded grimly. Their wording is deliberately restrained. The fact they're using the phrase large-scale geological disasters means they possess far more intelligence than we can imagine. Zhao Zilong turned to Lin Bay. This ties back to the email you sent them. Lin Bay shook his head, not entirely. The higher-ups must have detected anomalies long ago. They've only settled on official phrasing now. My email was merely a catalyst that pushed them to issue this public warning. Shen Ruobing called over from her family's compound, her signal cutting in and out intermittently. Did you hear the broadcast? I did. My father says panic buying will break out in the city once this notice circulates. Do you have sufficient reserves on your end? We're fully stocked. Good. She paused briefly. Only a few days left. Yeah, take care of yourself. The panic buying frenzy erupted that same afternoon. When Lin Bay headed downtown to pick up the last batch of hardware fittings, he saw endless queues snaking outside supermarkets. One man pushed 3 overflowing shopping carts piled high with bottled water and instant noodles. A middle-aged office worker fought another customer over the last pack of toilet paper in the parking lot, his face turning purple with exertion. When he returned home, Zhao Zilong was inspecting every bolt securing the perimeter wall. Lin Xiaoxi was baking flatbread infused with spiritual plant powder in the kitchen, a warm aromatic scent drifting out the windows. From inside the house, Father Lin and Uncle Zhao argued over the foundation slope, the 2 elders bickering back and forth, neither willing to concede a point. Kumpkin perched atop the wall, chest puffed out as it patrolled its territory. Every now and then it would lean down to peck at the wet, setting cement on the wall. When chased away, it simply hopped to a new section and kept pecking. Lin Bay stood in the center of the yard, and for a split second, everything felt unnervingly normal, almost unreal. Yet he knew exactly how little time this peace would last. In 7 days, the world beyond this front gate would collapse into ruin. Lin Bay. Zhao Zilong had appeared behind him without a sound. There's a man outside claiming to be property management, here to inspect unauthorized exterior renovations. Lin Bay turned around. Zhao Zilong's facial expression remained unchanged, but his eyes had sharpened with wariness. Handle him. Don't let him step foot inside the compound. Lin Bay pulled the front door halfway open, positioning his body sideways to block the entryway. A man in a dark windbreaker stood outside clutching a stack of inspection forms, a faded property staff ID pinned to his chest. He stole a glance into the yard, his gaze lingering 2 full seconds on the reinforced perimeter wall. His stare was far too heavy and penetrating for an ordinary property employee. Lin Bay rested one hand on the doorframe, deliberately obstructing the stranger's line of sight, and sized him up from head to toe. Dark gray windbreaker, black work trousers, a faded staff ID with a blurry printed photo pinned to his chest. Roughly 40 years old, steady grounded posture with his weight shifted slightly backward, a stance that let him burst into action at any moment. Property management? That's right, sir. The man smiled, revealing uneven yellowed teeth. An anonymous resident filed a complaint reporting extensive unauthorized exterior renovations on this standalone villa. Regulations require advance filing for major structural alterations, so I'm here to assess the work and complete official registration. It's inconvenient today, Lin Bay replied politely without moving his blocking hand. Elderly family members just moved in and are resting, and the yard is piled high with construction materials. Come back another day once we've tidied up, and I'll invite you inside for a full inspection. Leave your contact number, and I'll reach out to schedule a visit. The stranger's smile never faded, yet it never reached his eyes, which turned cold in an instant. After a 2-second silence, he closed his inspection folder and handed over a crumpled business card. Call this number within 3 days at the latest, otherwise official filing procedures will become complicated. Lin Bay took the card and spotted obvious red flags at a glance: flimsy low-grade paper, blurry printing, and a listed property firm named Unju Property Management. The actual management company for their residential district was Hungjia Property. He slipped the card into his pocket without reaction, shut the front door, and peered through the peephole. The stranger turned and walked away, pulling out his mobile phone once he rounded the corner. He pressed and held the screen for 7 full seconds. He wasn't making a call, but sending a voice message. Black Crow operative, Zhao Zilong's voice rumbled from behind him. He gripped a handleless cross pickaxe, holding it as if wielding a battle axe. The ID badge is fake, and the property firm name doesn't match. Lin Bay tossed the card onto the coffee table. Plus, he's wearing tactical combat boots with deep, rigid treads and heavy wear on the inner arches, signs of long-term specialized footwork training, nothing like a regular maintenance worker. When did you learn to analyze boot treads? I picked it up from you, Lin Bay answered. You once said a person's boot wear reveals their habitual weight distribution and movement patterns. Zhao Zilong walked over to the window, tugging back the curtain to scan the surrounding streets. He'll be back. Definitely. Today was only a reconnaissance run, Lin Bay nodded. He didn't catch sight of our whole household, so he won't strike prematurely. Send a text to the Shin family and tell them to tighten their perimeter security. That night, Lin Bay entered his spatial realm and noticed the spiritual farm plots had expanded roughly 10 centimeters outward. The spirit-infused soil grew slowly, yet it was undeniably expanding over time. Late that night, Lin Xiaoxi knocked on Lin Bay's bedroom door, her damp hair draped over her shoulders, her expression grave. Brother, what did you feel the first time you saw the premonition visions? Fear. Lin Bay set down the supply inventory list in his hands. But I soon realized fear accomplishes nothing. Lin Xiaoxi sat on the edge of his bed, staring at her fingertips, a nervous habit of hers. A few days ago I thought you'd lost your mind. It wasn't until this morning's official radio announcement telling everyone to stockpile supplies and stay indoors that I truly believed you. Brother, how many days do we have left? 10 days. After 10 days, all the people outside will. Many will perish, but none of our family will. Lin Bay's tone was unshakably resolute. Lin Xiaoxi nodded and stood to head for the door. Starting tomorrow, double the portion of spiritual plant powder in every meal. We'll build up everyone's physical vitality before the cataclysm arrives. The following 3 days marked the final push for base construction. Father Lin led Zhao Zilong and Shenhao to finish building the 4-wall-mounted observation sentries, outfitting each with rainproof awnings and safety railings. The airtight basement door was fitted with full rubber sealing strips, passing Uncle Zhao's rigorous pressure testing with perfect results. Mother Lin and Aunt Zhao inventoried all reserves, labeling each category with colored tags for easy sorting. Lin Xiaoxi quietly mixed spiritual plant powder into every dish served at mealtimes. Father Lin only commented that climbing the wall now left him far less winded, attributing his improved stamina to regular exercise. On the 9th day, Shin Ruobing arrived, but stopped at the gate without stepping inside. My family's compound is fully prepared. We'll look out for each other when the time comes. Before turning to leave, she mouthed the words "stay safe" to him, then vanished around the street corner. Lin Bei lingered at the gate for a long while. Zhao Zilong walked over, said nothing, and headed off to recheck the perimeter wall. Day 10, the final day counting down to the apocalypse. At 4 o'clock in the early morning, Lin Bei and Zhao Zilong began their final full inspection, triple-checking every critical system: basement running water, backup generators, diesel fuel reserves, weak points on the wall, and more. By noon, Zhao Zilong set down his pen. We've done everything we possibly can. As dusk fell, the whole extended family crowded inside the villa, filling the space with warm chatter and liveliness. Dinner was an abundant feast. Mother Lin and Aunt Zhao laid out a full table of dishes, each infused with spiritual plant powder. Lin Bei sat off in a quiet corner watching the laughing, chatting crowd filling the room. Outside, Zhao Zilong and Lin Xiaoxi sat on the yard steps talking softly. He wished he could freeze this peaceful moment forever, knowing it would become the core strength sustaining him through the dark days ahead. Lin Xiaoxi brought out mugs of pale golden spiritual plant tea, and Lin Bei stood to raise his cup. This tea is for every single one of you here. Thank you all for standing with me. This would be the last peaceful evening they would ever enjoy before the apocalypse descended. After dinner, Zhao Zilong stepped up behind him. What's the exact time? 2 a.m., Lin Bei replied. The streets will be dead quiet then, monitoring staff will be drowsy on shift, no vehicles on the roads, and the wholesale market security guards will be half asleep. Will 2 of us be enough? More than enough. I'll handle collecting the supplies, you drive the vehicle. Zhao Zilong pulled out 2 cigarettes. The two men stood side by side in the yard, the faint chemical scent of wall waterproof paint hanging lightly in the air. Above them stretched a brilliant starry sky, the city's distant streetlights still glowing bright, on the surface, indistinguishable from any ordinary night. 15 days ago you called me in the middle of the night, and I thought you'd completely lost your mind. Zhao Zilong exhaled a cloud of smoke. And now? Now I'm the one who feels insane. Only a madman would sign on for this plan of yours. Zhao Zilong stubbed out his cigarette, but Lin Bei smiled. The moon hung full and bright overhead, the distant wholesale market shrouded in pitch darkness. His phone screen lit up to show 10:30 p.m., 3.5 hours remained until 2 a.m., and less than 31 hours until the sky split open. Let's head inside and get 2 hours of rest. We leave sharp at 3 a.m. Lin Bei crushed his cigarette under his shoe. From inside the house drifted the clink of Mother Lin clearing dinnerware, Lin Xiaoxi soft humming as she washed dishes, and Father Lin and Uncle Zhao arguing over ventilation pipe layouts. These trivial, mundane sounds formed the gentle background melody of their final night before the end of the old world. 2 o'clock in the early morning, Zhao Zilong parked his beat-up Jetta down an alley behind the wholesale market's back gate. Resting one hand on the steering wheel, he glanced at the back seat through the rearview mirror. Lin Bei sat with his eyes shut, his fingers rubbing restlessly as if counting seconds under his breath. It was a nervous habit Lin Bei had carried for over a decade. Zhao Zilong had seen him do it before every exam and every job interview. It's time, Zhao Zilong said. Lin Bei opened his eyes. The East Ring Agricultural Wholesale Center was the city's largest farm produce hub. It was 2:15 in the morning, and the entire market hung in an eerie silence. The security control room sat just inside the main entrance. Zhao Zilong had scouted the place 3 days prior and drawn a full map of all surveillance cameras. There was only one night watchman, a man in his 50s who snuck off to nap in the frozen goods section at 1 a.m. sharp every day. Zhao Zilong had even memorized the rhythm of his snoring. You going or me? Zhao Zilong asked. I'll go. Lin Bei pushed open the car door and zipped his coat all the way up to his chin. Wait here. Flash the high beams twice if you spot anyone coming back early. Got it. Lin Bei avoided the main gate. He circled around to the market's west side and stopped beneath a nearly 3-meter-high wall with no cameras mounted on it. Drawing a deep breath, he locked his mind on a blind spot 3 meters inside the compound and vanished where he stood. A split second later, he materialized inside the market. Cold concrete lay under his feet, the metal roll-up shutter of the grain and oil section stood to his right, and a broken street lamp hung 3 meters overhead. The guard was in the frozen goods zone, at least 200 meters away. Lin Bei crept along the wall to the first warehouse, its door cracked open a finger's width. He pressed one fingertip into the gap and channeled his power through it. Sacks of flour stacked to the ceiling, towering piles of rice, barrels of cooking oil, and cartons of seasonings all vanished in less than 10 seconds. He moved to the second warehouse. It held nothing but vacuum-sealed northeast rice, 50 jin per sack, stacked almost 3 meters high. With a single sweep of his consciousness, the entire mountain of rice disappeared. Next came the third warehouse, flour, coarse grains, millet, crushed corn, cartons of yeast and baking powder, and barrels of peanut, rapeseed, and soybean oil. His will moved like an invisible broom, clearing row after row, leaving only empty shelving and stray grains scattered across the concrete floor. Once the grain and oil section was stripped bare, he turned into the chilled fresh produce warehouse. Whole pig carcasses hung in rows, alongside neatly stacked frozen poultry, whole chickens, whole ducks, pre-cut drumsticks, and wings sealed in giant vacuum plastic bags. He made no effort to sort anything, blanketing the entire cold storage with his power until every item vanished. He then moved to the seafood freezers in the frozen goods area, hairtail, yellow croaker, frozen shrimp, squid tubes. He took the freezers themselves into spatial storage as well. Anything without a spirit or master was fair game to take. The sundries section was his final stop. Toilet paper, wet wipes, toothpaste and toothbrushes, soap, laundry detergent, disposable tableware, cling wrap, storage bags, heavy-duty garbage sacks, tape, rope, lighters, matches. Goods no one would fight over in the apocalypse, yet the most overlooked survival essentials of all. Lin Bei spent nearly 15 minutes clearing every shelf in the sundries zone, not missing a single remote corner. He stretched out a hand to claim the last row of candles when a cold tightness pricked the nape of his neck. The exact same sensation he'd felt when he found the dead cats by the apartment alley. The air suddenly grew heavy, as if an unseen weight pressed against his skin. He spun sharply at a dull thud echoing from the cold storage. Something was moving inside. Holding his breath, he crept along the wall to the warehouse entrance and peeked inside. A hunched figure squatted in the far corner, tearing ravenously at a rack of frozen pork ribs. The man wore the security guard's uniform, his collar unbuttoned, his face caked in thick blood. Two eerie yellow glints reflected in his pupils amid the darkness. His fingernails had grown nearly 3 times longer than a normal human's, sinking into the pork ribs like rusted iron spikes. Lin Bay froze motionless. After several seconds, the guard suddenly lifted his head, sniffed the air, and dropped back to gnawing on the bones. He had not sensed Lin Bay, but Lin Bay had seen those eyes, a glow no human should ever possess. He retreated soundlessly all the way to the back of the sundry section, then teleported over the outer wall. When he climbed back into the Jetta, Zhao Zilong stared straight at him through the rearview mirror. He took one look at Lin Bay's ashen face and asked no questions. "Drive," Lin Bay said. "We haven't cleared the frozen goods section yet." "Leave it." Lin Bay buckled his seatbelt. His hands were steady, yet his knuckles blanched white from gripping hard. The guard mutated. Zhao Zilong turned the ignition, pulled out of the alley, and merged onto the provincial highway leading back to the suburbs. It was almost 3:30 in the morning by the time they reached the villa. Lin Bay unloaded the supplies from his spatial storage in batches down into the basement, while Zhao Zilong sorted and stacked everything beside him. The two mothers, Lin's mom and Zhao's mom, had woken from the noise of hauling goods. Draped in coats, they stood in the basement doorway, speechless at the mountains of supplies reaching the ceiling. Lin Bay stood after setting down the last sack of rice and noticed Kun had slipped out of the storage space without anyone noticing. The rooster perched on the living room TV cabinet, tilting its head to stare at the blood-red sky outside the window. Its comb burned brighter red than usual in the dim light, its wings hung slightly spread and low, rumbling clucks vibrated in its throat, a clear warning. At 5:10, Lin Bay called everyone into the living room. He had laid out the truth to them long before. All they could do now was wait. Zhao Zilong leaned against a window frame, one palm braced on the sill, the other wrapped around a pickaxe he hadn't yet fitted with a wooden handle. Lin's dad sat on the sofa, clasping Lin's mom's hand tight in his own. Lin Xiaoxi stood pressed against the wall, her lips pressed into a thin, tense line. 5:12 a.m. There was no sound at first. Truly nothing, even the chirp of crickets outside the windows cut off mid-note. Then the sky split open. The edges of the rift blazed blood-red, its center pitch black like an endless abyss. Countless strange streaks of light trailing flame poured out, packed so dense it looked as if every star in the universe was falling at once. The first wave of cosmic energy slammed into the ground 3 seconds after the rift tore open. The window glass did not shatter, yet the villa's foundation shuddered violently. An invisible pressure surged through the walls and seeped into every person's body. A searing heat welled up from deep in their marrow, as if every cell was being baked repeatedly by an invisible branding iron. The Jade Pendant tattoo on Lin Bay's wrist burst into blinding golden light. The raging, scorching energy flooding into him filtered the moment it touched his body. The violent, destructive portion was absorbed by the pendant, leaving only a warm, life-giving current racing through his meridians. Deep within his dantian, something began to break free. He opened his eyes. Lin's dad stared down at his palms, coated in a thin layer of earthen yellow light that spread from his fingers up his forearms, radiating a steady, heavy aura. Pale blue mist swirled around Lin's mom, soft and undulating like river fog at dawn. Lin Xiaoxi's eyes were squeezed shut, faint light pulsing between her brows, and the air around her hummed with subtle resonance. Zhao Zilong, standing closest to her, instinctively shuffled half a step aside. Zhao Zilong's own forearms had turned entirely metallic silver. Uncle Zhao and Aunt Zhou regained consciousness one after another. A wisp of faint cyan wind condensed in Uncle Zhao's palms. Aunt Zhou flicked a single finger and ignited a tiny flame that singed a small hole in her apron. Lin's mom swatted it out with a slipper. Not a single one of them had mutated. Lin Bay turned to gaze out the window. The sky had turned a uniform blood crimson, stretching all the way east. Thick black smoke rose above the city skyline, distant explosions and screams echoing non-stop from near and far. Standing before the window, watching the world tear itself apart, he pulled the curtains closed with an empty expression. Nobody steps outside. Lin's dad walked over to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, staring out at the ruins. The veteran construction worker who'd spent most his life laying brick fell silent for a long moment before speaking. "I built these walls. They'll hold." He paused. "What's your next plan?" Lin Bay did not answer. His gaze locked onto a spot 10 meters beyond the outer wall, where a mutated hound the size of a young calf lay crumpled on the ground. Its fur was jet black, dark red fluid dripping from its jaws. It strained to lift itself, a charred lightning scar splitting its spine, its legs twitching uncontrollably. He pulled his eyes away and turned to face the whole group. "The plan stays the same," he said. "We hold this home first. Then we head out to rescue survivors." Zhao Zilong climbed up from the basement, slinging a newly fitted pickaxe over one shoulder. "All right. We'll start with the nearest survivors." The first dawn after the sky rift blazed with unnatural crimson sunlight. Lin Bay stood atop the villa's roof. A sickly sweet metallic tang hung thick in the air, sending a cold prickle up the back of his neck. He had not slept all night. 7 heavy impacts had crashed against the villa's walls in the 3 hours following the rift. As soon as light spilled over the horizon, Zhao Zilong emerged from the basement, clutching a fire axe fitted with an extended wooden shaft. He'd spent the entire night lengthening handles for shovels, pickaxes, and other tools, calling the work defense modification. To Lin Bay, it looked more like hasty armament for a cold age militia. "How's the perimeter holding?" Zhao Zilong asked. "Quiet for now, but the monsters are still out there." Lin Bay gestured toward the courtyard. 3 claw marks half a finger deep scored the concrete, stretching from the gate crack all the way to the base of the wall, scattered gravel littering the ground. Clear proof something had tried to climb over the fence overnight. Zhao Zilong knelt to run a finger over the gashes, his expression grave. The 4-meter-high wall Lin's dad had laid was sturdy, yet it would not stop the far deadlier creatures bound to come in the apocalypse. Noise drifted from inside the house, and they headed back in to find everyone fully awake. The energy shock of the sky splitting had exhausted them all, yet left them oddly alert. Lin's dad sat on the sofa, his palms wrapped in that same earthen yellow light pressed flat against the marble coffee table. Yellow stone veins spread outward under his hands, and the table crumbled into fine dust on the spot. Lin's mom carried a pot of congee out from the kitchen and nearly dropped it in shock. "Take it easy. That marble was Xiaoxi's dowry." "I didn't mean it," Lin's dad said, looking troubled. "It just dissolved on its own. Grade A Earth Affinity. He can break down stone, not just conjure defensive barriers," Lin Bay said as he walked down the stairs, accepting a cup of spirit plant tea from Lin Xiaoxi. "Supernatural abilities rank from F to SSS. Your innate talent determines cultivation speed and your upper limit. None of us mutated because I mixed spirit plant extracts into our meals for the past 2 weeks. They boost awakening odds and raise talent grades." "Who has the highest talent in our family?" Lin Xiaoxi asked, lingering in the kitchen doorway with faint light flickering between her brows. "Your grade S mental power." The second Lin Bay finished speaking, her voice echoed crisply inside every person's head. "Test successful." Lin's mom clapped a hand over her mouth, and even the stoic Zhao Zilong looked stunned. "Mental telepathy? How far can you broadcast it?" "Full coverage of the villa for sure. I haven't tested farther, but practice might extend the range." Lin Xiaoxi opened her eyes and withdrew her mental power. Zhao Zilong immediately recognized its value, the perfect battlefield communications hub. Next, Zhao Zilong demonstrated his ability. Silvery metallic texture rippled from his fingertips up to his elbows. He dragged one index finger lightly across the coffee table, carving a mirror-smooth groove into the wood. Grade S metal affinity. He could turn his own flesh into bladed cutting weapons. Lin's dad stared at his metal forearms, mentally calculating how much faster he could reinforce walls with this power. Uncle Zhao and Aunt Zhou showcased their awakened abilities in turn. Uncle Zhao conjured thin streams of cyan wind, Grade A wind affinity, able to form small cyclones to pull and hurl objects. Aunt Zhou sparked tiny flames from her fingertips, Grade C fire affinity, low-tier talent yet endlessly practical for daily survival. Lin Bay tallied up everyone's ranks. Dad's Grade A earth, Mom's Grade B water, Xiaoxi Grade S mental, Zilong Grade S metal, Uncle Zhao Grade A wind, and Zhou Grade C fire. Not a single one below Grade C. We're far stronger than most awakened survivors stuck at Grade D or lower out in the wasteland. "What rank are you?" Lin's dad suddenly asked. "Dual Grade S, spatial affinity plus lightning affinity," Lin Bay answered honestly. Zhao Zilong nearly dropped the fire axe in his grasp. He'd known Lin Bay wielded spatial storage, but never guessed he commanded lightning as well. A dual S-rank power set meant he could single-handedly fend off small hordes of mutated beasts. "That's why you're confident we can head out to rescue people," Zhao Zilong hefted the axe onto his shoulder. "Your own strength is our greatest backup." Lin Bay walked to the window. "We're safe here, but countless civilians are trapped outside. Those crashes last night mean the mutated creatures are scouting the neighborhood. We need to go survey the area." "I'm coming with you." Zhao Zilong stood at once. Lin Bay assigned tasks. "Xiaoxi, stay home and blanket a 500-meter radius with your mental power for early warning. Dad, reinforce the outer walls. Uncle Zhao and Aunt Zhou assist you. Zilong and I will scout the surroundings. The safety of everyone here is our top priority." Lin's dad nodded firmly. "Go. I'll guard the walls." They pushed open the front gate to find Kun Kun, the jet-black rooster with scarlet plumage atop its head, perched one-legged on the wall crenellation, crowing into the blood-red dawn. Dark red blood, not its own, stained its tail feathers. Spotting Lin Bay, it flew straight down to land on his shoulder and pecked lightly at his ear. "You want to come too?" Lin Bay huffed a faint laugh. Kun Kun tilted its head, its gaze unwavering and determined. Lin Bay pulled the gate wide open. Ruins stretched out before them. Shattered glass, overturned trash bins, crooked street lamp poles littered the road, charred bird carcasses scattered across rubble. 15 meters ahead, the mutated hound the size of a young calf hauled itself upright from a pile of debris. Its coat was pure black, black blood oozing from its jaws, the lightning scar splitting its spine still visible. It was the same beast Lin Bay had seen the night before, and it was still alive. The hound locked eyes on Lin Bay, coiled its muscles, and charged with a deafening snarl. Lin Bay stood his ground without flinching, lifting his right palm as crackling blue-white lightning erupted across his knuckles. His lightning-wreathed fist slammed dead center into the beast's chest. The lightning surged through its body, sending it crashing back into the rubble with a caved ribcage, dead instantly. Zhao Zilong stepped forward to inspect the corpse. One punch killed it outright, every bone shattered. That strike hits as hard as a mortar round. Lin Bay knelt and spotted a thin crack splitting the hound's skull, faint fluorescent light glowing from within. He pried apart the broken bone with his dagger and pulled out an off-white crystal the size of a fingernail, warm to the touch. His own lightning spiritual power stirred instantly at its presence. This is a crystal core, growing inside every mutated beast's brain. Lin Bay held up the stone. We can absorb its energy to raise our ability cultivation levels. Zhao Zilong realized the full picture. Killing monsters isn't just for survival, it lets us grow stronger. Exactly. Lin Bay clenched the crystal core and glanced toward the smoke-shrouded city in the distance, faint explosions and screams drifting over the empty streets. The apocalypse isn't merely a disaster. He stood to his feet. Let's move. There must be far more mutated beasts and crystal cores nearby. The off-white crystal was no bigger than a fingernail. It carried a faint gentle warmth when gripped, its surface covered in tiny polished facets. Beneath the crimson sunlight, a wisp of pale blue light swirled slowly inside its core. Lin Bay channeled his Jade Pendant's perception toward it. The crystal's energy was pure, free of the violent impurities flooding the world after the sky rift. Definitely safe to absorb, though he held off for now. Stow it away for later. He slipped the core into his pocket and scanned the wreckage around them. There's bound to be more mutated beasts in this neighborhood. Zhao Zilong wiped black beast blood off his fire axe and slung it back over his shoulder. This way. They headed east down the main road. The glass storefront of a breakfast shop lay shattered, overturned bamboo steamers littering the pavement. Half-eaten buns caked in congealed blood spread across the asphalt. A broken mannequin torso rested outside a 2-yen discount store, its ragged tier marked by 5 deep claw gouges, an unsettling sight. Zhao Zilong stepped over the mannequin, sweeping his eyes over every shuttered roll-up shutter to hunt for hidden threats. Do you sense anything? Nothing yet. Lin Bay unfurled his mental power, only picking up vague, indistinct presences. Kuin stayed unnervingly quiet on his shoulder, its pale golden pupils glinting cold beneath the crimson sky as it tracked every movement around them. They walked 200 meters to a crossroads, traffic lights flickering erratically, an overturned food delivery electric bike dangling from a street lamp pole. Zhao Zilong suddenly raised a hand to signal a halt. Something behind that dumpster, 2 of them, maybe more. Lin Bay focused his mental sense and caught 4 fast-moving auras instantly. They're flanking us. They stood back to back in a defensive stance, and Zhao Zilong muttered lowly, "Which one hits first?" Before the words faded, a mutated hound launched itself straight at Lin Bay's throat from dead ahead. Lin Bay twisted aside, wrapped his fist in lightning, and sent the beast flying into a glass shop front with a single blow. A second hound pounced from the side immediately after. Zhao Zilong split its shoulder with his axe, his metallic arm absorbing the recoil before kicking the creature to the pavement. Yet 3 more hounds lunged at them from 3 separate directions in the next heartbeat, 6 beasts total, the first 2 merely decoys. Lin Bay understood in an instant, these mutated hounds were no ordinary wild animals. They knew how to lay ambushes, use bait, and coordinate to cut off escape routes. Your left, my right. Zhao Zilong roared, and battle erupted without delay. Lin Bay unleashed his full lightning affinity, blue-white arcs coiling around both arms. He punched one hound's skull apart in a burst of lightning, only for a second beast to sink its fangs deep into his left forearm, piercing straight through skin and muscle. Lin Bay grunted in pain, driving his lightning-charged right fist into the hound's abdomen and blasting it away, fresh blood streaming down his injured arm. The 6th hound struck with a vicious, precise leap, and Lin Bay had no time to block. Until a dark shadow plummeted from the sky. Kuin dove straight down from a utility pole, razor-sharp pale golden talons springing from its claws. It stabbed one talon clean through the hound's left eye, then ripped hard, tearing the eyeball free along with surrounding muscle in one brutal yank. The blind mutated hound screeched and collapsed, thrashing on the ground. Kunkin landed on the nape of its neck, sharp talons sinking deep into its flesh as its pointed beak struck repeatedly. 3 jabs were all it took to pierce the skull. It then shook black blood off its feathers and let out a piercing cry. The remaining mutated hounds, suppressed by its superior bloodline, froze for 2 seconds before scattering in all directions. Lin Bay stood rooted to the spot, staring at Kunkin preening its crimson plumage on his shoulder, momentarily lost for words. Zhao Zilong walked over, black blood splattered across his cheeks and the edge of his axe blade chipped from heavy use. You alright? That chicken of yours fights harder than a military hound. I'm fine. Lin Bei hastily bandaged the gash on his left arm and reached out to lift Kunkin, but the bird dodged him. Instead, it gently pecked his wound, as if checking his injury. Lin Bei suddenly realized that this chicken, raised entirely inside his spatial storage, loved stirring up trouble yet had never strayed far from his side. Thanks, he murmured softly. Kunkin tilted its head, its gaze oozing undisguised disdain that plainly read you're so weak. On the drive back, Zhao Zilong brought up a question out of the blue. Can Kunkin absorb crystal cores? What would happen if it ate one? Lin Bei glanced down at the bird perched on his shoulder. Kunkin met his eyes with an urgent stare, as if begging for a crystal core. We'll test it once we get home. Back at the villa, Lin Xiaoxi was already waiting at the gate, holding out a first aid kit. Mother Lin fussed over bandaging his wound, while Father Lin and Uncle Zhao watched Kunkin, looks of admiration on their faces. This chicken has a sharp understanding of human feelings. Kunkin flew up into the old locust tree to catch a midday nap. That night, Lin Bei took out 3 gray-white crystal cores harvested that day and held out the smallest one to Kunkin. The bird tossed its head back and swallowed it whole. Seconds later, faint golden light shimmered from the base of every feather, fading shortly after. It immediately sidled over, demanding another core. Zhao Zilong gasped in amazement. It's actually leveling up. Lin Bei handed over the remaining 2 cores. After swallowing them, the golden glow emanating from Kunkin grew far brighter, and its pale amber irises deepened to dark gold. It flew onto the coffee table and scratched a lopsided outline of a mutated hound with its beak, drawing an arrow pointing toward powdered spirit plants beside the sketch. Lin Bei stared at the drawing and had an epiphany. You mean combining spirit plants with crystal cores speeds up your bloodline evolution? Kunkin nodded. Everyone in the room stared in shock. Lin Xiaoxi quickly copied the drawing into a small notebook, jotting down all relevant notes beside it. Lin Bei teased the bird. How many more hidden abilities are you keeping from me? Kunkin snatched a sack of dried spirit plants in its beak and flew back to the locust tree, clearly heading up for a midnight snack. Lin Bei tried absorbing a fragment of crystal core energy himself. He found its power far more direct than that of spirit plants, boosting the spiritual energy in his dantian by nearly 20%. But it also carried faint toxic impurities. He resolved to bury crystal cores in the spirit field the next day, to see if the field could filter out the contaminants. Outside the window, distant howls echoed across the smog-choked city skyline, flickers of fire flaring and fading. The apocalypse's collapse was accelerating by the hour. Perched atop the old locust tree, Kunkin let out a long, resonant cry toward the blood-red moon, as if proclaiming one unshakable truth: this territory had an owner. The experiment began with a single bok choy seed. Lin Bei stood beside the spirit field inside his spatial storage, clutching a gray-white crystal core between his fingers. 3 full batches of seedlings had already matured in the field. The thumbnail-sized core swirled with faint blue liquid light inside. Holding it made the lightning-aligned spiritual energy within Lin Bei's body automatically converge toward his palm. Lin Bei sat cross-legged, clasping the crystal core in one hand. Wreathed in his lightning spiritual energy, the core dissolved into pale blue mist that seeped into his body. His power did rise, yet an uncomfortable burning sensation spread through his veins. He frowned. This energy is too impure. Long-term absorption will definitely cause complications. He first buried the core in empty soil at the southeastern corner of the field. 10 minutes passed without the slightest change. Switching tactics, he buried the core alongside an ordinary bok choy seed. Moments later, a strange new bok choy sprouted fully grown. Its entire body was translucent, its leaf flesh resembling icy jadeite, luminous veins threading through its leaves and radiating soft pale blue fluorescence. Its surface felt cool and silky to the touch. Lin Bei tore off a leaf and bit into it. Pure, unadulterated energy flooded his dantian instantly, free of all impurities. It washed away the lingering bitter residue from yesterday's absorption. So the spirit field treats crystal cores as fertilizer, growing purified spirit plants we can consume directly. His eyes lit up. He repeated the test with a larger crystal core, yielding an even bigger translucent bok choy that glowed far more vividly. It delivered over 3 times the spiritual energy boost of the first specimen. He had uncovered the pattern. The higher the crystal core's grade, the purer and more potent the spirit plants grown from it. He was about to begin a 3rd trial when a dark blur darted straight for the translucent bok choy. Lin Bei teleported to intercept it, only to miss. It was Kunkin, half a translucent leaf clamped in its beak. its eyes blazing with a look that accused him of being stingy. Before Lin Bay could reprimand it, Kunkin swallowed the leaf. Brighter golden light rippled across its feathers than the previous night, the crimson crest on its head standing straight on end. It glared at him sharply, demanding more of the purified plants. Lin Bay understood instantly. You need the crystal core energy filtered by the spirit field. Raw crystal cores alone aren't enough for your evolution. He only allowed one purified spirit plant per day for the bird. Kunkin fluffed its feathers in irritation, scratching a crude drawing of a chicken and a crystal core into the dirt with its talons to signal it needed both supplies. Lin Bei ignored its plea, plucked the remaining translucent bok choy, and stepped out of spatial storage. At noon, Lin Bei gathered Zhao Zilong and the rest of their core group, laying 3 translucent spirit plants of varying grades across the coffee table. He walked them through the experiment. Absorbing raw crystal cores introduces harmful impurities. Long-term use will stagnate cultivation or even trigger out-of-control superpowers. Spirit plants purified by the field carry 0 side effects and grant stronger power gains. Zhao Zilong studied the smallest translucent bok choy closely. 1 core yields 1 plant? We should use high-grade cores to grow purified spirit plants. And distribute low-grade raw cores to ordinary squad members for absorption. That maximizes resource efficiency. Lin Xiaoxi jotted down all experimental data rapidly, adding her input. Purify all high-tier crystal cores, allocate low-tier ones to squad members. This is the most rational allocation plan. This information stays confined to core personnel only, Lin Bei stressed gravely. If word of the spirit field's purification ability leaks out, every faction in the wasteland will target our base. Father Lin stood up to offer a warning. Anyone holding a precious treasure must keep a low profile. Our current strength isn't enough to fend off everyone greedy for our secrets. That afternoon, Zhao Zilong led a patrol to clear the surrounding zone, returning with 7 crystal cores. One had been harvested from a massive mutated cat, its core pitch black to the touch, emanating a cold, stinging chill. Lin Bei buried the black core together with a bok choy seed. 2 hours later, a unique plant sprouted half a foot tall, its narrow black leaves etched with faint dark gold runes resembling ancient incantations. He bit half a leaf. A scorching heat washed over his body, granting him perfect night vision that laid out every detail of the basement clearly in total darkness. This black core grants night vision and may tie to toxin or corrosive physique affinities. We don't have enough samples yet to draw definitive conclusions. Zhao Zilong fell silent for a long moment. What would happen if we planted a Beast King's crystal core? Lin Bei shook his head. I don't know. We'll test it if we ever get our hands on one. He gazed toward the half-collapsed skyscrapers downtown, likely home to far stronger mutated beasts and rare high-grade crystal cores. Lin Bei carefully plucked leaves from the black spirit plant and handed them to Lin Xiaoxi for logging. Kunkin hopped about restlessly, desperate for a taste, but Lin Bei held it back. We haven't identified all its side effects yet. You can't eat it until I finish testing it fully. That night, Lin Bei planted 5 ordinary crystal core bok choy batches inside the storage to stockpile. He ground the leaves of the black spirit plant into fine powder, labeling the jar, grants night vision, side effects undetermined, restricted access. Staring at the neatly lined furrows of the spirit field, a new thought crossed his mind. Perhaps the spirit field could also purify contaminated water, spoiled food, and even mutated toxic flora. He resolved to visit the Shin clan base the next day, both to exchange intelligence and collect samples of mutated plants to verify his theory. Besides, it had been 2 full days since he'd last seen Shinruabing. Dawn of the 3rd day after the Sky Rift catastrophe. Lin Bei stood atop the villa's perimeter wall. The blood-red mist hung thinner than it had the past 2 days, yet the sky remained a murky gray. Thin plumes of black smoke rising in the distance. Zhao Zilong emerged from the basement, clutching his chipped fire axe. He turned the blade over in his hands twice, shaking his head. I need a proper combat weapon. This axe will snap after fighting a couple more mutated hounds. What kind of weapon are you looking for? A military entrenching shovel would be ideal. Chop, slash, bludgeon, and the serrated edge can saw through materials too. Failing that, a machete will suffice. Zhao Ziling propped the sharpened axe against the wall. Shall we expand our cleared zone today? The 500-meter radius around the base still hasn't been fully secured. Those mutated hounds we fought yesterday came from the east. If larger mutated creatures sneak up on us, relying solely on the wall to hold them off isn't a sustainable long-term plan. Agreed, we'll tackle that today. Clear all the way east to the commercial street, sweep every building along the route, and search for any surviving civilians. As he spoke, his thoughts drifted to Old Manly. Old Manly was a retired middle school physics teacher who'd taught for decades. Before the apocalypse, every time they crossed paths in the elevator, the old man would pester him. Shaolin, have you found a girlfriend yet? Lin Bei had grown so tired of the question, he'd hit the door close button the second he heard the man's footsteps approaching. His apartment building still stood intact, but he had no idea if the old teacher was still alive. "You're thinking about Old Manly," Zhao Zilong observed. Then we'll hit your old residential complex first." Lin Bay glanced over at him. Zhao Zilong slung the axe over one shoulder, his expression unchanging as usual. That was just his way. He never pressed you for the reason behind your mood, only asked what action you intended to take. "All right." Lin Bei jumped down from the wall. "Call Hu Biao. He's been training hard these past few days. It's time for him to see real combat." Hu Biao was a survivor they'd rescued on the first day of the apocalypse. He'd worked as a construction foreman before retiring from military service, so he retained a solid physical foundation. Zhao Zilong had drilled him relentlessly the past few days. Weighted sprints, basic axe-slashing drills, no meals until he collapsed from exhaustion. Hu Biao never once complained. His 9-year-old son Xiao, who had lost his mother the day the sky split open, and now helped Lin Xiaoxi with kitchen chores around the villa. One night, Lin Bei had spotted Hu Biao squatting alone in the courtyard, staring blankly at his son, an unlit cigarette pinched between his fingers. He hadn't interrupted the man. He knew that cigarette would never be lit, a silent weight of grief he bore alone. The three men finished gearing up. Lin Bei summoned Kunkin out of spatial storage. The black chicken had been napping beside the spirit field, and when Lin Bei lifted it out, it glared at him with drowsy irritation, pecking his wrist hard. Ignoring the nip, Lin Bei perched it on his shoulder. "Time to work." Kunkin tilted its head. "Where are we going?" "Search and rescue. Your job is to keep watch from above." Kunkin let out a low cluck that sounded just like this Lord Chicken demands a hefty appearance fee, then settled quietly on his shoulder, scanning the surrounding landscape vigilantly. Lin Xiaoxi stood at the villa gate, eyes squeezed shut. Her mental power rippled outward in a circular wave centered on the villa, covering a radius of nearly 600 meters. Seconds later, she opened her eyes. Two mutated creatures 200 meters east, hiding behind the rolling shutter of the car wash shop. Their auras are faint, they look like they're asleep. Something's moving north, slow moving, doesn't match the signature of a mutated beast. She paused briefly. South leads toward the Shin Clan base, no abnormal readings there. Your old apartment complex to the west has living human signatures. How many people? At least 3 that I can sense, holed up on the top floor of the central tower, sealed inside an enclosed room. Their vital auras are extremely weak, they're almost certainly starving. Lin Bei nodded. Clear out the 2 creatures to the east first, then head west for search and rescue. Zhao Zilong split the car wash shop's metal shutter clean open with one axe swing. Before the 2 hiding mutated hounds could react, Lin Bei unleashed a bolt of lightning that flattened the left beast, while Hu Biao buried his axe deep in the right hound's nape. His axe technique was still rough from rushed training. His first strike failed to sever the spine, and the mutated hound twisted its head to clamp its jaws onto the axe handle. Hu Biao bore down with all his strength to hold the beast trapped, and Zhao Zilong delivered a finishing blow from its flank. The fight wrapped up quickly. Hu Biao squatted on the ground gasping for air for nearly a full minute, his hands trembling. Yet his eyes burned bright with resolve. "How did it feel?" Zhao Zilong asked him. "Disgusting," Hu Biao replied. "But I'm no longer afraid." Zhao Zilong clapped him on the shoulder. "Fear is only human. Only madmen feel no fear at all. You have to learn to fight alongside your fear. It sharpens your speed, fuels your ferocity, and stops you from making foolish mistakes." Lin Bei pried crystal cores from the skulls of the 2 fallen hounds. Both were plain gray-white, low-grade, and small in size. Hu Biao stared at the 2 tiny cores for a long time. "This is the stuff that makes people stronger?" "It is. Once your superpower stabilizes, I'll allocate one to you." Lin Bei stood upright. "Let's move west." Lin Bei's old residential complex was called Chui Garden New Residence. The pleasant name belied its plain layout. For 20-story tower blocks surrounded a small patch of withered lawn. The courtyard enclosed by the 4 buildings was completely empty. Streaks of dried blood streaked the pavement, dragging from the main gate all the way to the edge of a flower bed before cutting off. Lin Bei craned his neck to gaze at the top floor of the central tower, where Lin Xiaoxi had sensed the 3 living humans. The stairwell entrance was barricaded tight, overturned parcel lockers and fallen bicycles stacked behind the glass door to block entry. "They've sealed the door from the inside," Zhao Zilong noted. "Survivors' handiwork, mutated hounds can't bash their way through this blockade. Take the stairs." The stairwell entrance is blocked off too, same as the main door. "We'll have to climb the outer wall." Zhao Zilong pointed to the rows of air conditioner ledges running up the facade. "Climb in through the 2nd floor. The corridor window there's wide open, not boarded up." Hu Biao stared up at the line of air conditioning platforms, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. A decade working as a construction foreman after his military discharge had dulled his climbing agility, yet he voiced no refusal. Lin Bei sent Kunkin flying ahead to scout. The black chicken circled the tower twice, landed on a shattered top-floor window frame, peered inside for 2 seconds, then flew back to nod its head at Lin Bay. "Let's go," Lin Bay said. The 3 men clambered up to the second floor, pried open a fire exit door at the end of the corridor, and stepped into the stairwell. A pungent stench hung thick in the air, a sickly mix of disinfectant, human waste, and rotting food. Emergency lights along the walls flickered with dim pale glow. Empty mineral water bottles, instant noodle bowls, and torn discarded clothes piled high at every landing. People had once lived in these stairs, but they'd moved on long ago. When they reached the 15th floor, Zhao Zilong suddenly held up a hand. Faint rustling echoed from above, soft enough to sound like scurrying rats, but the rhythm was far too steady. Unmistakably human footsteps descending. "Someone's coming down," Zhao Zilong whispered. A middle-aged man wearing a property management uniform rounded the stair landing, gripping a rusted steel pipe raised high above his head, his hands shaking violently. Behind him cowered a trembling woman, clutching an infant swathed tightly in a blanket to her chest. When the man laid eyes on Lin Bay's group, his gaze flicked first to Kunkin perched on Lin Bay's shoulder, then to the fire axe in Zhao Zilong's grasp, before finally locking onto Lin Bay's face. His eyes blew wide with shock. The steel pipe slipped from his grip, clattering and bouncing down the stairs to skid to a halt at Lin Bay's feet. "How did you get in here? What about the monsters outside? We heard fighting noises down below. Are you police? Military? Sent to rescue us? Where's the government? Is the government still functioning? My wife and baby haven't eaten in 2 whole days, Lin Bay cut his rambling short. "How many more survivors are upstairs?" "The 20th floor." The man pointed upward, his finger still trembling. 3 elders locked themselves inside the elevator machine room. One of them's a former physics teacher, Old Manly. "Old Manly's alive?" Lin Bay blurted out in surprise. "He's alive, but starving badly. We didn't dare venture downstairs. Those mutated hounds camped out at the building entrance for 2 full days before leaving today. We're nearly out of drinking water too." The man wiped sweat from his face, forcing a smile that looked more miserable than tears. "My name's Sun Ning. I work property security here. Lead us up." The entrance to the 20th floor elevator machine room was barricaded with an overturned office desk and 2 woven sacks stuffed full of books. Sun Ning knocked gently on the door. A narrow crack pulled open, revealing a wrinkled elderly face with cloudy yet alert eyes. "Old Manly. Sun Ning? Did you find food? Any sign of those creatures downstairs? Have they gone?" Old Manly's voice died mid-sentence the instant he spotted Lin Bay. His clouded eyes raked Lin Bay from head to toe, his expression shifting from stunned shock to a bitter, tearful half-smile. "Lin Bay? You're still alive. Grandpa." Lin Bay knelt down to meet his eye level. "I've come to take you with me. Come stay with us." Old Manly did not move. He lingered in the doorway, dry cracked lips trembling with countless unspoken questions. Yet only one slipped out. "Are you all right? I knocked on the door of your tiny apartment a few days back, but there was no answer. I thought you'd." "I'm safe," Lin Bay assured him. "I bought a villa on the outskirts and set up a survival base. We've got plenty of food, clean water, and medical supplies. It's far safer than hiding here." He told Sun Ning to support Old Manly, while he took Zhao Zilong and Hu Biao to rescue the other 2 elderly people locked inside the elevator machine room on the 20th floor. One of them was the wife of Old Manly's chess-playing friend, Old Zhang San. According to Old Manly, Zhang San himself had mutated into a monster on the night the apocalypse broke out. He'd only survived by hiding inside this apartment building. As he spoke of Zhang San, Old Manly's mouth drooped and the wrinkles on his face deepened. "We played chess together for 20 years. A heavy silence fell over the group. Lin Bay said nothing in response. He led everyone back down the stairs the way they'd come. When they reached the 10th floor, Zhao Zilong suddenly halted, leaned his head out the stairwell window, and his face paled. "Something's closing in on us. Not dogs, rats." At least dozens of them pouring out from the underground parking garage, drawn here by the smell of blood. His tone remained steady, yet he spoke faster than usual. Lin Bay leaned out to check as well. Swarms of dark gray mutant rats flooded out of the garage entrance like a disturbed nest. Each one was nearly the size of an adult rabbit, their incisors glinting with a dull crimson glow. "Run," Lin Bay ordered. "Lead everyone down to the 4th floor, then cross the connecting walkway to the adjacent building. I'll hold them off." Hu Biao hoisted an elderly man who could no longer walk on his back. Sun Ning shielded his wife and infant child, and Zhao Zilong steadied Old Manly as they charged down the stairs. Lin Bay stood his ground and turned to face the stairwell window. Bolts of lightning crackled across his forearms, converging into a glowing orb between his fingertips, flooding the entire stairwell with stark blue-white light. He punched straight through the window, unleashing a torrent of lightning 12 stories down toward the garage entrance, which detonated amid the rat horde. Several mutant rats were blasted flying, and a foul stench of scorched fur and rotting flesh hung thick in the air. Kunkin took flight from his shoulder and let out a short, shrill cry toward the upper stairwell. Lin Bay glanced up, scraping claws against metal echoed from the ceiling ventilation ducts. At least 40 or 50 rats were scurrying through the pipes, heading their way. We can't block them all off. Lin Bay sprinted down the stairs. Kunkin, move out. He was the last one to exit the building, slamming and bolting the stairwell door shut behind him. A deafening, endless patter of tiny bodies slamming against the steel door echoed out, sending chills down everyone's spine. Fortunately, the reinforced fire door would hold against the rats for a good while. The group raced across the connecting walkway to the neighboring apartment block and fled all the way back to the villa, none daring to glance behind them. Back at the base, Mother Lin's eyes welled up the moment she saw Old Man Lee's haggard state. She asked no questions, simply brought out a large pot of freshly brewed spirit grain porridge and ladled a bowl for every rescued survivor. Sunning's daughter was only a few months old and could not eat solid food, so Mother Lin hurried to the kitchen to heat a bottle of milk powder. Stock Lin Bay had bought in bulk from the wholesale market. Old Manly sat at the dining table, cupping the warm porridge bowl in both hands. Finely chopped spirit plant leaves were mixed into the broth. He took one sip, then froze. Tears spilled unbidden down his wrinkled cheeks, dripping into the pale green porridge and blending with the soup. He swiped at his face with the back of his hand, gave up halfway, and continued eating in loud, gulping mouthfuls. Slow down, Mother Lin murmured beside him. There's plenty more in the pot. Old Manly set down his bowl and looked up at Lin Bay sitting across from him, his voice rough and hoarse. Young Lin, you knew this disaster was coming ahead of time, didn't you? Lin Bay did not deny it. Then those bottles of water left in the stairwell days ago, were they your doing too? Lin Bay blinked in surprise. He'd never left water bottles in the stairwell. That wasn't me, he replied, pausing to think. Probably property management staff or one of the neighbors. I wasn't even in the residential complex those days. Old Manly nodded and dropped the subject, taking another sip of porridge before muttering to himself once more. We played chess together for 20 years. Lin Bay said nothing in reply. He simply stood, picked up Old Man Lee's empty bowl, and returned to the kitchen to fill it to the brim a second time. After finishing his second bowl of porridge, Old Man Lee drifted off to sleep on the living room sofa. Wrapped in a blanket Mother Lin had fetched for him, Sunning's family was settled in the ground floor study. His wife hovered beside the infant's cot, her gaze fixed warily on the window, while Sunning clutched a rusted steel pipe tight in his grip, claiming it made him feel secure. The other rescued elders sipped spirit herbal tea in the dining room. None wept, none demanded answers about the government. They had long since cried all their tears away. Lin Bay stepped out into the courtyard and stripped off his coat caked with rat blood. The bandage wrapped around his left arm seeped fresh blood. The wound he'd sustained fighting mutant hounds a few days prior had split open again. First, he checked on Kunkin. The black chicken shook rat fur from its feathers, preened its claws with its beak, and tilted its head, urging Lin Bay to hurry. Lin Bay pulled out a translucent spirit plant leaf, which Kunkin swallowed whole. Its pupils flared bright for a split second amid the dusk. Zhao Zilong walked over clutching a logbook, jotting down a quick summary of the rescue operation. 6 survivors retrieved, 2 mutant crystal cores collected, the mutant rat horde's location marked on the map. He lit a cigarette and spoke gravely. This rat infestation in the garage isn't random. They're numerous and organized. They blocked the main entrance and circled around through the ventilation ducts. There's definitely a huge alpha mutant controlling them. Lin Bay nodded in agreement. Ordinary mutant rats are not a threat on their own, but organized swarms can gnaw straight through concrete. If we let them multiply unchecked, they'll spread all the way to the villa. We'll go back tomorrow to wipe them out before their numbers grow any larger. Hu Biao looked up from sharpening his axe. I'm coming with you. The more scared you are, the more you have to fight. Just like Brother Zhao said. Zhao Zilong gave a wordless nod, and the 3 agreed to set off at dawn. That night, Lin Bei studied the mutant rat crystal core. It was pitch black all over, etched with scale-like patterns. Icy cold to the touch. When he probed it with his mental power, he sensed only chaos, ravenous hunger, and a bloodthirsty frenzy. He buried the core in his spirit farm and planted cabbage seeds atop it. 2 hours later, a jet-black sprout sprouted, far larger than the vegetation grown from the mutant cat core he'd used previously. He tasted a tiny fragment of the leaf. It brought an intense burning sensation in his throat and granted far stronger night vision than earlier variants. He stored the plant away for Lin Xiaoxi to analyze later. Early the next morning, Lin Bei instructed Lin Xiaoxi to research the new black spirit plant, portioned out the translucent spirit leaves, and told Mother Lin to give extra servings to Old Manly and Sun Ning's wife. Mother Lin made no attempt to dissuade him, only bidding him stay safe. The 3 men arrived at Chui Garden new residence. The rolling metal shutter of the underground garage had been dented and warped from repeated impacts, and a thick stench of rot seeped out through the gaps. Lin Bay unfurled his mental power, a chill running down his spine. At least 100 mutant rats slumbered inside the garage, and a massive, hulking shape loomed deep in the back, its heavy, labored breaths echoing through the space. They quickly finalized their battle plan. Lin Bei would draw the full horde head-on, while Zhao Zilong and Hu Biao guarded both sides of the entrance, cutting down fleeing rats using the narrow passage to their advantage. Kunkin would patrol the overhead piping, keeping watch for rats sneaking around through the ventilation shafts to ambush them from behind. To lure the sleeping rat swarm fully out into the open, Lin Bei crouched down to the electrical substation on the second underground level, amassing crackling lightning in his palm and slamming it hard into the power distribution box. A deafening boom echoed as the control panel exploded instantly. Flammable debris stacked nearby ignited orange flames spreading through the pitch-black garage. The sleeping rats were jolted awake by the blast and fire, letting out shrill, piercing squeaks. They surged forth from every tunnel and crack like a black-gray tidal wave, some scurrying vertically up the walls. A dense, writhing mass that made one's skin crawl. The battle erupted instantly. Snarls, screeches, the clang of metal, and the rats' high-pitched squeals intertwined, ringing painfully in their ears. Lin Bei stood at the forefront, lightning blazing across both arms and coalescing into two lightning whips as thick as human forearms. He lashed them left and right, blue-white bolts slicing through the darkness. Every crackling strike incinerated mutant rats into charred corpses, splatters of black blood and mangled flesh coating his sleeves. Zhao Zilong gripped his entrenching shovel tightly, the sharp blade glinting as he swung it with a whistling whoosh. The serrated edge sank deep into the rats' spines, and a sharp twist split their bodies cleanly in two, gushing dark red innards across the ground. Piles of rat carcasses half as tall as a person quickly stacked at his feet, his trousers soaked through with reeking blood. Kunkin danced nimbly between the overhead pipes, flying silently. Its razor-sharp talons struck precisely into the rats' eye sockets with every dive, killing them in one blow. Slain rodents plummeted from the ducts, thudding heavily onto the concrete floor below. Yet the rats were endless. One wave was cut down, only for another flood to surge forward immediately. A slightly larger mutant rat clamped its jaws tight around Hu Biao's axe handle. He strained hard but could not tear it free. Desperate, he activated his strength enhancement ability, wrapping both fists in an earthen yellow glow and slamming them into the rat's skull. At that moment, a second mutant rat lunged at his calf, its fangs piercing straight through his trousers and sinking into his flesh, blood soaking his pant leg in an instant. Hu Biao let out a pained groan, on the verge of being overwhelmed by dozens more rats. When two figures burst rushing through the garage entrance, hot gusts of wind billowing ahead of them. Zhang Wanqing's eyes were sharp and focused. 7 or 8 razor-thin wind blades materialized around her body, spinning at high speed with a shrill whistling cut through the air like invisible scythes. Each blade sliced 3 or 4 rats clean in half, flinging severed limbs and black blood everywhere, and carving wide gaps through the dense swarm. Zhang Wanyu followed close behind her sister, conjuring 2 blazing orange fire orbs in her palms. She hurled them straight into the thickest cluster of rats. A thunderous explosion ignited a wall of flame across the garage. Burned rats let out agonizing screams, scurrying ablaze in frantic circles only to be struck by successive fireballs, reduced to blackened ash. Wind fed the flames, and fire amplified the wind. The sisters' complementary abilities perfectly countered the horde, halting the unrelenting rat advance and sending the swarm into disarray. The rats scattered in every direction, fleeing in panic. Just then, an extremely deep, raspy roar rumbled up from the third underground level, filled with unbridled rage and frustration, and the putrid stench in the air grew exponentially thicker. Lin Bei instantly ceased attacking and spread his mental power to its full extent, locking firmly onto the source of the roar. Deep within the third basement level loomed a massive, indistinct shape slowly shifting position. Even while lying prone, it stood nearly 2 meters tall, its body covered in thick black fur, limbs as thick as an adult human's arms. Don't chase them. Lin Bei lowered his voice and barked sharply at the group who'd been ready to give pursuit. Clear out the remaining rats here and withdraw. Do not engage that giant mutant. He could clearly sense the colossal beast making no move to charge their way. Instead, it was rapidly retreating, as if avoiding something. Judging by Kunkin's earlier reaction, Lin Bei surmised it feared either his lightning elemental ability or the aura emanating from the black chicken. The group immediately held back their assaults and focused on eliminating the last straggler rats. Blades sliced and pierced nonstop, lightning and fire intertwining to turn the garage entrance into a blood-soaked battlefield. Minutes later, the fighting finally ceased. Every person was covered in wounds, exhausted and disheveled. Deep puncture wounds crisscrossed Hu Biao's calf, fresh blood oozing steadily from the gashes. A coin-sized chunk of flesh had been torn from Zhao Zilong's right arm by rat claws. The wound gaping raw and red, sweat and blood streaming down his forearm. The recoil from her wind blades split the webbing between Zhang Wanqing's thumb and forefinger, blood staining her weapon's grip. Zhang Wanyu, drained from overusing her fire ability, was deathly pale. Her legs trembling so badly she could barely stand upright. A rat that had sneaked up behind Lin Bay raked a half-foot-long gash across his back, peeling skin wide open and soaking his tactical uniform in blood. He'd been so absorbed in combat, he'd felt nothing until wiping sweat from his forehead and brushing against the wound, sending a searing stab of agony shooting through him, warm blood coating his palm instantly. Not daring to linger with the giant mutant still silent on the third basement level, they evacuated the garage at top speed. Kunkin landed back on Lin Bay's shoulder, shaking rat blood and dust from its feathers, and let out a short, raspy cry toward the overcast sky, a clear warning call that echoed twice between the apartment buildings before fading away. Back at the base, Lin Bay treated everyone's injuries. Shen Ruobing arrived shortly afterward, setting down a cloth sack brimming with dozens of high-grade crystal cores. The Shen group stockpiled these. I heard you go through cores quickly, so I brought you a share. Lin Bay accepted the sack. Call me along next time you head out on missions. Shen Ruobing nodded, taking a small pouch of translucent spirit leaves. Before leaving, she said softly, my father said the perimeter wall around your base is excellently constructed. That afternoon, Lin Bay took out 2 premium crystal cores. He planted the dark green core alongside tomato seeds, yielding jet black tomatoes with a metallic sheen to their skin. Their flesh brimmed with potent wood element spiritual energy when mashed and slathered over Hu Biao's leg wound. The injury visibly sealed shut within minutes. Lin Xiaoxi named the fruit healing berries. The deep blue crystal core sprouted a short blue-purple herb. Tasting a leaf granted a temporary boost to reaction speed and sensory range, dubbed swift grass. Lin Xiaoxi jotted detailed notes in her notebook, and Lin Bay added a critical annotation. The Rat King has not appeared. A far larger mutant dwells on the 3rd underground level. Avoid that area for now. Lin Bay divided the crystal cores among the group. Glancing over the supply log listing the newly harvested spirit plants, he understood fully. The spirit farm was no longer merely his personal trump card. Only if every member of their faction grew stronger could they defend the base. A dull boom rumbled from the direction of Choi Garden new residents outside the window. He closed the storage room door and did not look back. Day 6 of the apocalypse. Lin Bay knelt beside his spirit farm within his spatial storage, 3 distinct crystal cores laid out before him. Ash gray, dark green, and deep blue, alongside 3 ordinary cabbage seeds. Over the past 5 days, he had confirmed crystal cores could act as super fertilizer to grow special effect spirit plants, with each color corresponding to a unique power. Today, he planned to run systematic comparative trials to gather precise data. First, he buried the ash gray core and planted cabbage seeds. 1 hour later, a translucent white cabbage sprouted. Labeled purification type, ash gray number 3. After tasting a leaf fragment, he verified its spiritual energy was pure and stable. Identical in quality to his previous batches, ideal for mass stockpiling for daily cultivation. Next, he planted the dark green core. It took 30 minutes longer to mature than the ash gray variant, producing a larger, richer-hued plant, thick streams of dark green spiritual light swirling within its veins as if ready to drip off the leaves. He marked it healing type, dark green number 2. He tore off a small piece and pressed it against the unhealed gash on his arm. Within minutes the wound had sealed over halfway, its medicinal potency far stronger than his first batch of healing vegetation. Lin Bay surmised dark green cores originated from mutant beasts with robust defensive or regenerative powers, and the core's quality set an upper limit on the healing plant's efficacy. Last came the deep blue core, the trickiest to cultivate of the 3. It took nearly 2 full hours for sprouts to break the soil. The resulting blue-purple swift grass was 1/3 shorter than his first harvest. Lined with denser serrated edges, its leaves dusted with a thin silvery frost. He popped half a leaf into his mouth. A cool rush shot straight to his forehead, boosting his teleport reaction speed by 40% and expanding his sensory radius from 1 mu to 1.2 mu. Unfortunately, the effect lasted less than 3 minutes, shorter than earlier swift grass samples. Lin Bay theorized the more concentrated the spirit plant's essence, the more explosive its temporary buffs, making it a short-use combat stimulant. Once the trials concluded, Lin Bay sat cross-edged and sorted his findings in his notebook. Ash gray cores, purification-type spirit plants, suited for daily spiritual cultivation. Dark green cores, healing type, accelerates wound regeneration. Deep blue cores, buff type, for short bursts of combat advantage. Black cores, special variant, grants night vision, harvested primarily from elite mutant beasts. Closing the notebook, Lin Bay surveyed his spirit farm, which spanned just over 2 mu of land. At maximum capacity, he could grow 30 spirit plants per day. Exceeding that quantity drained the soil's spiritual energy, stunting all new growth. The base now sheltered nearly 30 people, and his core fighters required constant supplies of spirit plants to train. Zhao Zilong consumed a minimum of 3 every single day, while Hu Biao relied on a steady stream to push toward awakening his full mutant ability. I must prioritize supplying the core combatants first, Lin Bei muttered to himself. The rest will maintain basic physical conditioning for now, until I can expand the spirit farm. He knew absolute equality did not exist in the apocalypse. Only powerful ability users could safeguard the base, and redirecting vital resources to them was the only way the entire group would survive. He harvested all 30 daily spirit plants, sorted them into cloth sacks, and prepared to exit the spatial realm when Kunkin darted forward, lunging straight for the translucent purification leaves. Lin Bei teleported to block its path, catching it by the tip of one wing. You've already eaten 1.5 plants today, that's enough. You snuck half a dried leaf I left out to air dry this afternoon too. There's still dirt stuck on your beak. Kunkin glanced down at its soiled beak, then nonchalantly cleaned its face with its claws, acting as if all evidence had been erased. Lin Bei stopped teasing it, grabbed the sacks of spirit plants and stepped out of the spatial storage, handing one pouch to Lin Xiaoxi. He tossed a smaller bag to Kunkin. Deliver this to Xin Ruobing, 10 purification leaves, 5 healing plants. You know the way. Kunkin clamped the sack in its beak, slung it over its back with its wings, and paused at the doorway to glare back at him, clearly demanding a delivery reward. I'll give you an extra leaf when you get back, Lin Bei promised. At once, Kunkin flew off contentedly. In the afternoon, Xin Ruobing visited alone, carrying a folder and sealed glass vial. Inside the tube sat a section of jet black rootstock glowing with faint emerald fluorescence, emitting a faint constant buzzing hum. This sprouted from a crack in the concrete on the edge of Zone B. Every team member who touched it suffered poisoning, blisters covering their skin, dizziness, and nausea. I was hoping you could examine it. Lin Bei took the glass tube and probed its contents with his mental power, detecting mutated spiritual energy tainted by the skycrack, laced with complex toxins. He brought the mutated rhizome into his spatial realm and set it along the edge of the spiritual farmland. The black fertile soil glowed pale golden as it slowly stripped away and digested the contaminants coating the rhizome's surface, breaking them down into harmless powder. Yet the purification process was agonizingly slow, taking roughly as long as growing an entire crop of Chinese cabbage. At the spiritual field's current scale, the spiritual energy consumed to purify a single mutated plant would suffice to cultivate 3 crystal core spiritual plants. Hardly a worthwhile trade-off. Once purified, the rhizome turned into an off-white brittle husk that crumbled at the lightest squeeze. Lin Bei exited the spatial realm and found Xin Ruobing. It can be purified, but the efficiency is far too low. For now, we'll prioritize growing regular spiritual crops. Crush 1 healing spiritual plant and split the pulp into 2 applications to dress the poison team member's wounds. Test its effectiveness. Xin Ruobing simply nodded, refraining from prying into details of the spiritual farm. She possessed impeccable sense of propriety. With their core business concluded, Lin Bei handed her a mug of spiritual plant tea. Their fingertips brushed accidentally as he passed it over, and he noted how cold her skin felt. Your hands are freezing. I just finished clearing the eastern section of Zone B. There's a strong wind draft over there. Xin Ruobing sipped the tea. I heard you headed down to the underground parking garage again. The Rat King never emerged. We eliminated a horde of minor mutant rats, so their infestation won't spread for the time being. As he spoke, he led her out into the yard. At that moment, Kunkin stood atop the perimeter wall, locked in a standoff with a mutant crow roughly the size of a hen, its eyes blood red. When the crow dove to attack, Kunkin sidestepped and swatted its skull with one claw. The crow let out a shrill cry and tumbled over the wall's outer side. Xin Ruobing raised an eyebrow as she watched Kunkin. What exact breed is this chicken you're raising? A free-range farm native chicken. Bought for 15 yuan a gene. A farm chicken? No ordinary farm chicken could fight like that. Lin Bei shrugged, and Kunkin let out a triumphant crow from its perch on the wall. Before taking her leave, Xin Ruobing left a regional map marked with mutant beast activity zones, small survivor encampments, and routes leading to the official government safe zone. She also offered to deploy her combat personnel to lend assistance. We have sufficient manpower for now. I'll reach out to you for reinforcements once we expand our territory later. Lin Bei walked her to the gate. Their eyes met briefly before they each turned to depart. That evening, Lin Bei sorted 30 spiritual plants and logged them into storage. 10 reserved for cultivation practice, 5 for medicinal preparations, 5 set aside for Kunkin and the iron-feathered eagle egg, and the remainder handed over to Lin Xiaoxi to integrate into daily meals. Beside the spiritual farmland, the golden runes etched into the eagle eggshell had doubled in vibrancy, and a slow, steady heartbeat could be heard from within. Before bed, Lin Bay cultivated on the second floor of the small spirit tower for 1 full hour of practice time. The spatial realm's time flow moved twice as fast as the outside world, so only a single hour had passed in reality when he emerged. The thunder's spiritual energy in his dantian had nearly doubled in volume, yet its growth rate was slowing. Spiritual plants yielded steady but gradual progress, while crystal cores delivered rapid yet impure power surges. To break through to the next level, he required higher-grade crystal cores. Lin Bay glanced out the window. The restricted forbidden zone loomed hidden in the night. Higher superhuman tears, deadlier mutant beasts, more people relying on his protection. He pushed the heavy thoughts aside, switched off the lamp, and fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, Shinruabing arrived. Lin Bay spotted her from the top of the perimeter wall. She rode a modified electric scooter with a folder and 2 glass vials holding strange plant samples stowed in the front basket. The hem of her dark blue trench coat was splattered with mud, her hair cut even shorter. And the band-aid covering the webbing of her right thumb had peeled at the edges, caked with grime. "Did your father send you?" Lin Bay unlatched the main gate. "I came of my own volition." Shinruabing wheeled the scooter inside. "He gave me a set of resource figures for cross-verification." Lin Bay ushered her into the living room. Mother Lin was simmering congee and moved to serve her a bowl, but Lin Bay stopped her. "Mom, let's handle critical matters first." Mother Lin smiled and stepped back, muttering that the congee would stay warm on the stove. Zhao Zilong carried a topographical map of the surrounding area upstairs, while Lin Xiaoxi brought mugs of spiritual plant tea and pulled out a small notebook to take notes. Shinruabing opened her folder, revealing a spreadsheet listing the Shin compound's industrial reserves for diesel generators, 2 sets of storage batteries, a full mechanical repair toolkit, 12 tons of steel, 8 tons of cement, 2,000 liters of fuel, plus a stockpile of parts to assemble a compact canned food packaging line. My father proposes trading all these industrial materials for your spiritual plants that boost physical constitution. Lin Bay skimmed the document and nodded for Lin Xiaoxi to hand over Hope Fortress's spiritual plant inventory list. 40 translucent spiritual plants, 15 healing variants, 10 boosting variants, and 3 special variants. Translucent spiritual plants strengthen physiques and raise superhuman awakening rates. Your compound houses numerous ordinary survivors, making these an essential staple. What exactly do you want in exchange? Shinruabing pressed. 2 diesel generators, half your fuel reserves, and that canned food assembly line, Lin Bay stated plainly. Spiritual plants spoil quickly. Processing them into dried powder for cans extends their shelf life and maximizes their utility. Shinruabing agreed without hesitation. Lin Bay surmised she had either planned this trade long beforehand, or the Shin family's demand for spiritual plants was far more urgent than he'd anticipated. "Does your father have any other instructions?" Lin Bay asked. Shinruabing fell silent for a moment before speaking slowly. "Late last night, traces of a king-tier mutant beast were discovered on the outskirts of our compound. Its claw marks stretched nearly 5 fingers deep, with a 2-meter stride length, located to the south, not far from both our bases." A heavy silence descended over the living room. Zhao Zilong circled the southern zone on the map. The king beast's roaming range encompassed both compounds. "You urgently need to raise your overall combat strength." Lin Bay pinpointed the core issue instantly. "Exactly. Ordinary survivors need aid to awaken their powers. Low-tier superhumans require help breaking through ranks, and your spiritual plants function as strategic wartime supplies." Shinruabing nodded. Lin Bay stepped over to the regional map, which covered a 10-kilometer radius divided into green, yellow, and red hazard zones. A vast stretch of uncharted red danger zone occupied the entire southern expanse. "How many capable fighters does your father command?" 2 A-tier superhumans, for B-tier, 11 C-tier, and below. The compound holds nearly 60 residents total, Shinruabing answered promptly. "We have far fewer people here. For core combatants, fewer than 10 awakened ordinary superhumans. Our total population less than half of yours." Lin Bay sat back down. "Cooperation is non-negotiable. Our 2 factions will jointly clear the 3-kilometer stretch of highway between our compounds and establish a mutual defense pact. If either base comes under attack, the other will flank and provide backup support." They finalized their joint operation plan, Shinruabing with Li Zheng wanting to clear the zone traveling north from the south, while Lin Bay and Zhao Zilong advanced south from the north. The full sweep would be completed within 3 days, with a shared rendezvous point set midway for coordinated handoffs. Addressing persistent radio signal interference, Lin Xiaoxi proposed relaying intelligence via chained mental power transmissions, a method reliable enough for monitoring their controlled territory. Shinruabing promised unlimited material support from the Shin compound for the duration of the joint operation. Lin Bay led Shin Ruobing out into the yard. Kunkin had just returned from its patrol and perched on an old locust tree preening its feathers. Spotting the two of them, it flew down to land on Lin Bay's shoulder and nipped his ear lightly. "Allow me to formally introduce Hope Fortress's chief scout, Kunkin," Lin Bay said with a grin. Kunkin fluttered over to circle Shin Ruobing's shoulder, sniffed at her hair, then flew back to the tree and let out a satisfied coo. "It pecks anyone it dislikes. You've passed its inspection," Lin Bay explained. Shin Ruobing stared at the black rooster, exasperated, and repeated her question. "What breed is it really?" "Just an ordinary farm chicken," Lin Bay replied, still smiling. Shin Ruobing turned, swung a leg over her electric scooter, secured a cloth sack holding 10 healing spiritual plants to the frame, and glanced back to warn him. "We advance simultaneously at 6:30 tomorrow morning in Zone A. Don't be late." The scooter rolled out through the gate and vanished into the morning mist. That afternoon, Zhao Zilong took a team to the Shin compound to transport the first batch of traded supplies, while Lin Bei remained at the fortress sorting trade records. He understood full well that exchanging spiritual plants for industrial equipment would let Hope Fortress build a processing production line to multiply the value of their crops. A single fresh translucent spiritual plant only sustained one person's cultivation for a single day, but ground into canned powder, it provided 4 full days of nourishment. As dusk fell, Lin Bei stood atop the perimeter wall gazing toward the southern horizon dyed crimson by the setting sun. The king-tier mutant beast still lurked deep within the restricted zone. A faint, distant roar echoed from the mountain valleys, its reverberations rolling through the ravines. He waited until the sound faded completely before heading back inside. The house was filled with warmth and soft golden lamplight, radiating a cozy, homely atmosphere. The living room bustled with activity. Kunkin hopped onto the coffee table sneaking pickled spiritual plant tomatoes. Hu Biao's son stood watch beside it to warn of discovery. Zhao Zilong sharpened a newly rehandled entrenching tool. Father Lin pored over structural reinforcement manuals muttering about shoring up the perimeter wall. It was loud and cramped, yet brimming with the vibrant vitality of people still alive. The joint clearing operation proceeded far more smoothly than anticipated. Over 3 days, Lin Bei and Shin Ruobing led separate teams advancing from the north and south respectively, fully purging the 3-kilometer stretch of highway connecting their 2 compounds. Lin Bei brought Zhao Zilong and Hu Biao pushing southward, while Shin Ruobing led Zheng Wanjing plus 2 B-tier superhumans moving north. Lin Xiaoxi and Zheng Wanyu stayed behind to guard their respective bases, relaying battlefield intelligence through linked mental power channels. Wrecked vehicles littered the highway, the metal roll-up shutters of roadside shops torn and dented, store shelves ransacked bare. All usable supplies had long since been looted. Mutant beast sightings along the route were sparse, and the few stragglers that darted out were low-grade weak specimens, easily dispatched with a single swing of Zhao Zilong's entrenching tool. The group did not even bother harvesting their crystal cores. The only formidable foe emerged on the 3rd afternoon beside an abandoned gas station halfway down the highway. A mutant lizard the size of an adult tiger burst out of an oil storage pit. Its gray-brown keratin scales were impenetrably tough, lined with jagged barbs running down its spine, and one sweep of its heavy tail crumpled the gas station's roof support beams. Zhao Zilong's entrenching tool only left a faint white scratch on its hide, and Hu Biao's axe chipped along the blade edge. Lin Bei's lightning strikes could conduct damage through its body, yet the lizard dodged nimbly back into the oil pit to evade the attacks. At the critical moment, Zheng Wanqing rushed over from the southern flank. She channeled all her mental power into a razor-sharp wind blade that sliced precisely through the lizard's unarmored oral cavity the instant it opened its jaws, killing it with one fatal blow. Curious, Lin Bei asked her about the precise weak point strike, and learned she had raised lizards as pets as a child, knowing their mouths were the only spot devoid of protective scales. Watching her aloof, solitary figure walk away, Lin Bei could not help but wonder if the years she and her sister spent under the Zheng family's control had been far harsher than he'd imagined. Their rendezvous point was set inside an abandoned auto repair shop, where Shin Ruobing had already posted sentries to maintain watch and was tallying their combat gains. The pickup truck beside her was piled high with tires, storage batteries, motor oil, and other salvaged materials, plus 2 mutant beast carcasses. "The 3-kilometer highway stretch is fully cleared," she said. Lin Bei stepped closer. "How will we organize the joint defense rotation?" A shift rota system. Shin Ruobing handed him a printed schedule. Each compound will station 2 personnel for round-the-clock 24-hour shifts, with this repair shop serving as the central outpost, covering early warning ranges for both bases simultaneously. "We'll use flag signals and bonfire flares for alerts. I'll send over the pre-arranged signal codes tonight." She brought up the ongoing consumption of spiritual plants, and Lin Bei spoke candidly. The fortress could supply a minimum of 20 plants daily, boosting to 30 in emergencies, though sustained high output would drain the spiritual farmland's vitality. 20 per day is sufficient, Shinruabing nodded. We'll boil them into kanji for ordinary survivors to fortify their basic physiques. In exchange, the canned food packaging line will be delivered to your compound this afternoon. Who will you assign to learn its operation? Lin Bay decided to task his mother with the work. Her steady hands and meticulous attention to detail made her perfect for delicate assembly and processing labor. After finalizing all details regarding grinding and sealing spiritual plant powder, Shinruabing mounted her electric scooter and departed. That same afternoon, the packaging line arrived. 3 technical staff from the Shin compound finished assembly and calibration within an hour. Mother Lin and Aunt Zhou stood beside the machinery carefully studying every operational step, with Aunt Zhou diligently jotting notes for future reference. When Lin Bay descended the basement stairs, the yard was bustling with activity. The Shin technicians unloaded equipment, while Zhao Zilong brought back 8 rescued survivors. The group had hidden inside derelict apartment buildings, surviving solely on frozen food for 10 days, malnourished, but free of critical injuries. Lin Bei told Mother Lin and Aunt Zhou to serve each survivor a bowl of spiritual plant kanji. The 8 men squatted in the yard devouring the meal ravenously. One 16 or 17-year-old boy finished 2 full bowls, his face glowing with satisfaction. After dinner, Lin Bei gathered all survivors in the basement to register their information, with Lin Xiaoxi logging names, ages, former occupations, and unique superhuman abilities. When it came time for the tall, lanky Huangwei to register, he suddenly flew into a tirade, demanding to know why they only received 1 small bowl of kanji, accusing the fortress of hoarding supplies and running a tyrannical regime, even complaining that the rooster Kunkin received better treatment than him. Lin Bei leaned against the doorframe and waited for him to finish venting his rage before speaking calmly. You claim everyone deserves equal treatment. If danger strikes, would you march out with us to hunt mutant beasts? There's a dead mutant lizard half a kilometer out. Drag its carcass back here, and I'll serve you an extra bowl of kanji. Do you dare go? Huang Wei fell silent instantly, his face flushing deep red with embarrassment. Lin Bei turned to address the entire group and laid out the fortress's core rules. This place has no tyrant, nor any self-proclaimed savior. Those capable of combat venture out to slay monsters in exchange for supplies. Those unable to fight contribute labor, tending crops, cooking meals, reinforcing the walls. Any work is acceptable. Every resident must pull their weight. No one gets to live off others' labor for free. If you find these rules unacceptable, the front gate remains unlocked, and you are free to leave at any time. As soon as he finished speaking, the stocky Zheng Guowei stepped forward first to pledge cooperation. He had worked as a supermarket purchasing manager in the old world, skilled at inventory stocktaking and operating forklifts, so Lin Bei assigned him to assist Uncle Zhao with supply management. An elderly woman with sewing and cooking skills joined the logistics team, and a young former nurse was immediately recruited by Aunt Zhou to organize the medicinal stockpile. Huang Wei awkwardly admitted he could drive vehicles and was placed in the transport crew to haul salvage materials alongside Hu Biao. After supper, Hu Biao sought out Lin Bei, clutching a crumpled cigarette between his fingers. He confessed he did not want to remain confined to logistics support. He craved to grow stronger, to avoid letting his son see him as nothing more than a coward who only ran from danger. Lin Bei nodded, telling him to start supplementary training alongside Zhao Zilong the next morning, focusing on physical conditioning, melee chopping drills, and breaking through his superhuman tier barriers. He also set aside 1 translucent spiritual plant inside the spatial realm for Hu Biao to replenish his vitality after each training session. Early the next morning, Lin Bei stepped outside to find Hu Biao practicing axe chops on wooden stakes in the yard, his palms covered in thick calluses and fresh blood blisters, while simultaneously coaching the scrawny teenage boy through basic combat stances. Lin Bei teased him for training new recruits before mastering his own skills, and Hu Biao laughed it off, saying practicing alongside the teen helped refine his own technique. Lin Bei nodded silently, knowing anyone willing to voluntarily mentor new survivors would eventually evolve into a core backbone of the fortress. He was about to inspect the perimeter wall when Lin Xiaoxi hurried over, her face grave with alarm. Brother. Kunkin crowed 3 times. That's its signal for unidentified intruders approaching. Lin Bei sprinted straight up the wall. Kunkin perched atop the tallest stone parapet, its gaze locked firmly on a collapsed residential building in the distance. Through the thin morning mist, several orderly human figures advanced steadily toward the villa compound. Sound the full alert for everyone. Lin Bei's eyes sharpened with vigilance. These are not mutant beasts, they're people. The morning mist still hung thick across the landscape. Lin Bei stood atop the perimeter wall gripping a fire axe newly fitted with an extended handle, its freshly sharpened blade yet to taste blood. His gaze cut through the fog and the stretch of open ground dotted with rubble, locking onto the half-collapsed residential building far off. Human silhouettes, no bulky mutant beast frames, clear human forms. Roughly 7 or 8 men, 2 leading the advance at the front, 3 trailing at the rear, with 2 rifle-wielding figures sandwiched in the center, moving along the edge of the ruined buildings toward the villa. Their footwork was steady, advancing in a disciplined, trained formation. Lin Bay recognized this tactical pattern from the basic drills Zhao Zilong had run for their own people, scout squads utilizing terrain for alternating cover, one man advancing while another holds watch, maintaining a minimum of 2 firearms trained on potential threat directions at all times. These aren't ordinary civilians. Zhao Zilong appeared silently at his back. Lin Bay had not heard him climb up from the basement, but spotted the modified entrenching tool in his hand, its edge still stained with black dried blood from the mutant lizard they'd killed the previous day. The 2 men in the center carry Type 81 rifles, but their grip posture is off. They're not formal soldiers, just untrained amateurs who've picked up weapons without enlisting. The shortest man at the front, I recognize him. Who is he? One of Pang Jinliang's men. The fake property agent who came to scout our compound last time, that scar-faced short man, the one holding the handgun on the left of the formation. Lin Bay narrowed his eyes. The figure shifted through the mist, but he made out the gaunt, sharp-featured scar-faced man who had once posed as property management to spy on their fortress. This man was Pang Jinliang's lackey, and if the hound had come sniffing around, the master could not be far behind. They avoided the main road entirely, circling over from the abandoned construction site to the west. Lin Bay lowered his center of gravity. They took the back route to avoid being spotted, yet deliberately slowed their pace, waiting for us to call out first. This is not a surprise raid, just a reconnaissance probe. Should we hail them? Hold off for now. Let them draw closer. Lin Bei turned and gestured toward Lin Xiaoxi standing at the stairwell landing. She closed her eyes, spreading her mental power outward like an invisible net across the western construction site. After several seconds, she opened her eyes to report, for men forward, for lagging behind, 8 total. 2 more figures remained concealed behind rubble, not yet revealing themselves. 8 intruders armed with 3 firearms and 5 bladed weapons, 0 detectable superhuman energy fluctuations, at least within the range her mental sense could cover. Lin Bei now held a clear grasp of their strength disparity. He propped the axe against the stone parapet and stood fully exposed to the pale morning sunlight. The silhouettes in the mist froze instantly. The scar-faced gaunt man lifted his head from the front of the formation, spotted Lin Bei, and split into a wide grin revealing 2 gold-capped front teeth. Well now, if it isn't Boss Lin. The scar-faced man's grating, loud voice carried clearly across the stretch of rubble separating them. What's this, standing guard all by yourself? Your fortress has no other defenders left. Lin Bei did not reply. He scanned the enemy's formation from his elevated vantage point, then fixed his gaze on the hidden figure lingering at the back of the group. This person crouched beneath the half-collapsed eave of a ruined building, broad-shouldered and stocky, his right hand hanging loose at his hip with a massive gold ring wrapped around one finger. Pang Jinliang. No need to hide, Lin Bei spoke out loud. You dragged 8 men out here at the crack of dawn. This isn't a casual stroll, is it? A moment of silence lingered behind the rubble. Then Pang Jinliang stepped out from the shadow of the eaves, an unlit cigar clamped between his teeth. He was wearing the familiar grin Lin Bei knew all too well, fake and greasy, the exact same look he'd sported when signing loan contracts back at the office. Shaolin, long time no see. Word's gotten around that you've been doing pretty well lately. Built yourself a little base? Looks quite put together. Pang Jinliang pulled the cigar from his mouth and gestured toward the villa behind Lin Bei with the fingers holding it. I just dropped by to look around and chat. After all, we used to be business partners. That money you owed me, sure, cash is worthless in the apocalypse, but favors still count. I don't owe you any money, Lin Bei said flatly. It's all paid off, principal plus interest. Paid off. Pang Jinliang's fake smile froze for a split second. You borrowed $500,000 from me. That was before the apocalypse. The full sum still sitting untouched in your bank account. You can go withdraw it anytime you want. Lin Bei spoke without the faintest flicker of emotion, as if stating an obvious fact everyone ought to know. Someone on Pang Jinliang's side snickered from atop the rubble, a young kid clutching a rifle. The laugh barely escaped his lips before Scarface shot him a venomous glare. Bank account balances meant nothing in this ruined world, and Lin Bei's reply was no genuine retort. It was a public slap in the face. Pang Jinliang's smile faded completely. He stared hard at Lin Bei for several seconds before shoving the cigar back between his teeth, unlit, grinding it between his molars. He strode forward a few paces to stand behind Scarface, craning his neck to look up at Lin Bei atop the perimeter wall. Fine, let's drop the money talk. Let's get down to real business. You've got piles of supplies here, and I've seen survivors from several surrounding blocks flocking toward your compound. You're a smart man. Why don't our 2 groups merge? My men provide manpower, your stockpiles provide food. No need. I haven't finished speaking yet. There's no need to hear the rest. Lin Bay rested his arms on the wall chronolation. I don't trust your men, and I'm not giving you my supplies. It's that simple. Pang Jinliang bit down harder on his cigar, the muscles at the corner of his jaw twitching, yet he quickly plastered his easygoing smile back on his face. He held up both hands in a placating, harmless gesture. All right. No hard feelings even if we can't strike a deal. Since we can't come to an agreement, let's try another arrangement. We'll write off the interest on that $500,000 you borrowed. You can pay me back whenever you get around to it later. But you've got to give me some compensation, right? I saw you've got plenty of rare goods here. Those plants that boost human physique? Hand some over to me. Let's call it a gesture of friendship. Lin Bei said nothing. He glanced sideways at Zhao Zilong. Zhao Zilong vaulted over the perimeter wall and landed steadily outside the courtyard. He planted his military entrenching shovel firmly into the ground, the blade scraping a thin layer of cement dust loose. Then his arms began to shift, silvery metallic sheen crept upward from his fingertips. He clenched his fists tight enough to send a muffled creak rippling through the shovel's steel handle. He took one heavy step forward, and the ground seemed to shudder beneath his feet. You heard what he just said, didn't you? Zhao Zilong tilted the shovel's tip toward Pang Jinliang. Do I need to repeat it? Scarface instinctively raised his rifle, but his hands shook unsteadily. He was no stranger to metal transmutation superpowers. He'd met a handful of ability users since the apocalypse broke out. Yet his gut screamed that the man standing before him was no ordinary low-tier mutant. The two rifle-toting goons beside him both subconsciously stepped half a pace backward. Pang Jinliang's performative smile finally crumbled away entirely. He ripped the cigar from his mouth and hurled it hard onto the dirt. He stared daggers at Zhao Zilong for a moment, then refocused his gaze on Lin Bei atop the wall. Just then, a chicken landed lightly on Lin Bei's shoulder, black-feathered with a scarlet comb, shaking dew from its wings in the morning mist. It tilted its head to study Pang Jinliang and let out a low, rumbling cluck. Scarface's pupils shrank at the sight. He clearly hadn't forgotten the last time this bird had swatted a pistol clean out of his grip with one clawed strike. Pang Jinliang fell silent for a long while, then laughed again. This grin was nothing like his earlier false warmth. It was a cold, menacing sneer. Very well, Lin Bei. You've got guts. But think carefully, these aren't peaceful times anymore. You know how chaotic the outside world's become. More allies mean more paths to safety, but more enemies are inevitable too. You snubbed me today. Don't come crawling to beg for my help later. He stepped back 2 paces and waved his men to retreat. Several thugs formed a protective ring around Pang Jinliang and herded him back toward the rubble, with Scarface bringing up the rear. Before he vanished, he glanced back, flipped Lin Bei the middle finger, then hurried to catch up with his boss. Lin Bei stood atop the wall and watched until every last figure disappeared into the maze of collapsed buildings, then vaulted back down into the courtyard. Zhao Zilong climbed over the wall behind him, leaned his entrenching shovel against the foundation, and chugged half a mug of water Lin's mother handed him. This isn't the end of it, Zhao Zilong warned. Pang Jinliang bullies the weak, but fears the strong, yet he holds grudges deep down. You humiliated him out in the open today. He'll definitely rally a mob to come settle scores sooner or later. He won't dare launch a frontal assault. Next time he'll sneak in under cover of midnight, creep up from the flanks, or stir up trouble some other way. I had the same hunch. Lin Bei picked his axe back up off the ground. But we couldn't let him set foot inside the compound. Men like him only grow greedier the more you give in. If we hand over the spirit plants today, tomorrow he'll demand our entire spirit crop fields. He told Lin Xiaoxi to expand the outer perimeter guard radius to 800 meters and finalize the joint defense shift schedule with a Shin family base ahead of schedule. Effective immediately, 3-man patrols would circle the villa at all times, with at least one superpower user assigned to every shift. Broken glass and ground spikes were to be installed along all structurally weak sections of the perimeter wall, and no non-patrol personnel were permitted to wander outside after dark. Kun fluttered down from the wall and perched on Lin Bei's shoulder, pecking lightly at his earlobe, far gentler than the nips it dealt strangers. It took Lin Bei a second to realize the small gesture was meant to comfort him. He rested a palm gently on its feathered back and nodded. You put on quite a show today. I'll give you an extra transparent spirit plant later as a reward. Evening. A messenger arrived from Shin Ruobing bearing an unsigned letter written in her handwriting. It was brief, only 4 characters scrawled across the page. Need backup? Lin Bei jotted a reply on the reverse side. Not for now. I'll call you if we require aid, and sent the messenger back the way they'd come. Once the Shin envoy faded into the twilight, Lin Bei returned to the villa. Lin Xiaoxi had already updated a new map detailing guard posts and firepower emplacements. She pointed out color-coded zones one by one as she explained. Red zones are absolute alert sectors, suppress any intruders on site. Yellow zones are observation zones, hail them first to confirm their identity. Green zones are only accessible to personnel from our 2 bases. The joint defense roster's fully finalized too. 3 guards from our compound and 3 from the shins will stand watch tonight. Zhao Ziling propped 3 newly sharpened entrenching shovels against the wall for standby use, then double-checked the flag signal markers on the second-floor balcony. Lin's father patched 2 wall crevices he thought were too thin with cement. Old Uncle Lee helped Lin's mother portion out bowls of spirit plant porridge in the kitchen, moving slowly and steadily without a single tremor in his hands. Night wind drifted down the hallway, warm overhead lights glowing soft and golden. Lin Bay had wanted to say something, yet he held his tongue. He simply watched everyone busying themselves with their respective tasks, the scene alive and reassuringly grounded. 3 days after Peng Jinliang's departure, a quiet tension settled over the base. No one voiced it aloud, yet every resident could feel the shift. An extra sentry post had been added to the wall. Zhao Zilong raised the physical training standards drastically. Hu Biao's blistered palms scabbed over only to tear open again. Wrapped in gauze, he kept chopping wooden stakes nonstop until his axe blade bent out of shape. The scrawny teenage recruit ran laps until he retched, wiped his mouth clean, and rejoined the formation without a single word of complaint. Lin Bei watched it all unfold, never delivering a single rousing speech. He'd sat through enough empty promises before the apocalypse. He knew tangible actions spoke louder than words. The only provision he made was ensuring an unlimited supply of spirit plants for training, 30 mature plants distributed daily. Transparent spirit plants were prioritized for the combat squad. Zhao Zilong, Hu Biao, and the Zheng sisters each received a minimum of 1 per day, with a remainder allocated based on training performance, strict rewards, and penalties enforced. Lin Xiaoxi tracked all training metrics and spirit plant consumption in a notebook crammed with dense numbers and trend arrows. Only 2 entries bore downward pointing markers: Huang Wei, who skipped every training session yet cut the longest line for spirit porridge, and the young girl still recovering from a sprained ankle. Huang Wei skipped training again today, but he finished his porridge faster than anyone. Lin Xiaoxi closed the notebook. Lin Bei replied calmly, "Leave him be for now. We'll hold out through this crisis first. If he refuses to train, he'll have to fend for himself when Peng Jinliang's men attack." Sweaty and exhausted from the training grounds, Zhao Zilong strode over, leaned his shovel against the wall, drained half a mug of water. He pulled out a small cloth pouch holding crystal cores, 3 off-white, 1 pale cyan, harvested that morning while clearing the western rubble zone. "We finished sweeping the west sector. Took down 4 mutated hounds. The pale cyan core came from their alpha. It was nearly twice the size of the others we've encountered." He paused, his tone turning heavy. "Mutated beasts have been shrinking their hunting ranges these past few days, not because we've hunted them to near extinction, but because something far larger is driving them away. It's almost certainly the Beast King from the southern district. If it keeps marching north, it'll breach our patrol perimeter in a week at the latest." Zhao Zilong circled the southern edge of the map with his finger. "We can fight it with our current manpower, but casualties will be unavoidable." Lin Bei fell silent for a moment, staring at the crystal cores laid out on the table, then reached a decision. "All crystal cores will be purified in the spirit crop fields and grown into spirit plants before distribution. We can't let accumulated impurities cap our base's overall strength growth." Zhao Zilong nodded. "Will the fields yield enough?" "They will. The fields produce 30 plants daily. I intend to push every capable fighter to break through at least 1 minor realm before the Beast King arrives." The following days sent the entire base into a full-speed training crunch. Hu Biao was the first to advance. He'd been stuck at grade D for months, training twice as hard and consuming twice the spirit plants as everyone else with 0 progress. Lin Bei pinpointed his mistake. He'd been cultivating his strength-type ability as a pure enhancement power, pouring all his spirit energy into his fists while neglecting the large muscle groups in his waist and legs, the core foundation he'd built hauling steel rebar pre-apocalypse. Zhao Zilong revised his training regimen, making Hu Biao carry sandbags starting at 50 pounds, ramping up to 80, while running laps, performing deep squats, and climbing stairs with the weight strapped to his back. On the afternoon of the 6th day, as Hu Biao completed his 12th lap carrying the 80-pound sandbag, earthy yellow light burst forth from his right leg, his superpower shattering its bottleneck and ascending to grade C. He did not pause to celebrate. He hefted the sandbag back onto his shoulders and kept running, only muttering a single line: "I've fallen too far behind all of you." Lin Xiaoxi's breakthrough unfolded far more subtly. She extended her mental power to blanket the base's outer zones nearly non-stop each day. Her stable coverage radius now topping 800 meters, nearly double her original range, putting an A-grade breakthrough firmly within reach. Lin's father also made new strides. Guided by Uncle Zhao, he redirected his earth element ability from pure defense toward offensive applications. A single palm strike slamming into the ground could split open jagged fissures. While the cracks were narrow and slow to spread, he gained full control over their direction and depth. Lin's mother only laughed and chided him for wrecking the courtyard's drainage ditches. Kun kept busy as well. Zhao Zilong trained it daily to fly higher, faster, and more silently, sending a drone fitted with spirit plants airborne for it to chase down. By the 5th day, the chicken could reach the drone's maximum flight altitude and snatch its reward with pinpoint accuracy every single time. Yet it remained stubbornly aloof around strangers. If unfamiliar faces stepped into the courtyard, it would perch on a tree branch and pretend to sleep. Lin Bay set aside an extra half-transparent spirit plant for it each day. This single chicken's combat strength rivaled 2 grade C ability users combined. Shin Ruobing paid a visit and shared the Shin family's latest combat strength tally. After joint rubble-clearing operations, their base had awakened a wave of new superpower wielders, adding 2 grade B and 4 grade C users, half of whom had broken through thanks to sustained spirit plant consumption. She also brought an official liaison letter from the government-established safe zone. A formal safe zone had been set up at the City North Sports Complex, capable of housing tens of thousands of survivors. A survivor representative conference would be held 3 days later at the abandoned logistics center in the Western District, with all independent bases urged to establish permanent communication channels. After reading the letter, Lin Bay resolved to attend. We've held this compound for over 2 weeks, relying entirely on guesswork to track mutated beast movements and other base developments. Meeting the other representatives will let us piece together a full picture of the overall regional situation. The 2 agreed to set up the day after tomorrow. Shin Ruobing would bring 2 grade B ability users, while Lin Bei would take Zhao Zilong and Kun. Larger parties would only slow travel progress. Lin Bei questioned the B7 designation assigned to their fortress on the letter, and Shin Ruobing explained it had been registered by military liaison Captain Ji Ming, guaranteeing legitimate, secure proceedings. Lin Bei relayed the conference invitation to his core team, and everyone unanimously agreed he should go. His father only offered a quiet reminder, stay safe out there. That night, Lin Bei stepped into his spatial storage dimension to harvest mature spirit plants. The crop fields had expanded to nearly 3 mu, with a maximum daily output climbing to almost 40 plants. 3 dark green saplings also grew along the edge of the furrows. He sorted the ripe spirit plants into separate cloth sacks, setting aside sufficient reserves, rations for the combat squad, supplies for logistics staff, Kuen's extra share, and regular shipments reserved for the Shin family. As he reached the final row of crops, he detected abnormal spatial ripples along the field's edge, chaotic currents surging and receding like the slow breath of the dimension itself. A soft peck tapped the toe of his boot. Kun stood there clutching an overlooked transparent spirit cabbage in its beak, swallowing it whole before settling back down on the dirt with a satisfied huff. Lin Bei patted the rich black soil beneath his feet and murmured quietly, I'm heading back out. He lifted the bulging sack of harvested spirit plants and turned to step out of the spatial dimension.